We are live, Senator.
All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like we have a quorum, so we can get started. Welcome to the committee members and welcome to everybody watching.
We are live, Senator.
Okay. So welcome everybody to the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. Today we have everybody. 2 agency briefings. Looks like we have a quorum, so we can get started. There we go. So we have 2 agency briefings today, one coming from the Office of Marijuana Policy and the other coming from the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations. And then after that, Janet will be giving just a kind of a refresher and tips on some legislative matters. So both OMP and BABLO fall under DAFs. So this morning we have Director Eric Gunderson from OMP, and we have Anya Trundy from DAFs here. So welcome, and Director, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to start your presentation on marijuana.
Absolutely, really appreciate it. And I know everybody loves a good PowerPoint. I apologize, but in this format, we thought it would be the best way to more or less facilitate this conversation and guide the conversation. So if Anya has that ready and can share it, that would be great.
Great, we can see it now. Yeah.
Perfect. So for just the sake of introductions, thank you, Senator Lucchini. Thank you, Representative Chiazzo and the VLA committee for having us. I'm hoping this conversation will help our work and your work over the next session now that VLA is home to all things marijuana, both of our marijuana programs. So really appreciate the invite to come speak with you today. So as the Senator said, my name is Eric Gunderson. I'm the Director of the Office of Marijuana Policy and have been since we were established by the Mills administration in February of 2019.
And I'm Anya Trundy. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Administrative and Financial Services. I serve as a liaison between our various bureaus and the governor's office and the legislature.
Great, and I apologize, I forgot to have the committee introduce themselves. So we can do a really quick rundown if that's helpful for you so that you get to meet everybody that's on our committee. Yeah. Because there has been a significant amount of turnover since the last session. So we can kick it off with the House Chairman, Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini. Chris Chiazzo, I represent House District 28, which is the western part of Scarborough.
Great. Representative Wood.
Hi, I'm Representative Wood, and I represent House District 38, the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, Representative John Tuttle from District 18, the east side of Sanford.
Senator Farron.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Senator Brad Farron, representing Senate District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County.
Representative Kinney.
Oh gosh, my touchscreen wasn't working. Yes, I'm Representative Kinney. I represent House District 99, which are 9 towns in western Waldo County.
Great. Representative McCrate.
Good morning. I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and part of Brunswick in the House.
Representative Riley.
Good morning. I'm Representative Riley. I represent District 34, which is part of Westbrook.
Representative Supika.
Good morning. Representative Laura Supika, representing a portion of Bangor.
Representative Corey.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Corey. I represent half of Windham.
Great. And I'm Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the Senate. I think that's everybody. I'm just following the boxes here. So if you're ready, Anya and Eric, you can restart the presentation.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all this morning. We did our introductions. So think on if you're ready, we can just kick it right off and go to the next slide. So really what we're trying to accomplish here today, again, since you are now the home to all things marijuana, both our medical program and our adult use program, we first and foremost want to introduce you to the Office of Marijuana Policy, our mission, visions, and values, which really help you understand our decision-making process and how we operate as an office. Then we'll go to more or less our roles and responsibilities and obligations in regulating the state's 2 marijuana programs. 3, we'll go to a real high level, very high level, 30,000 foot view tutorial to kind of outline the differences between the state's adult use program and our medical program. 4th, we'll provide you with some information as far as our current rulemaking and what's on the docket for our legislative agenda, which you folks will see. And then finally, we'll kind of set you up for what our end vision is, what our ideal state is, and give you high level kind of bits and pieces of our 5-year strategic plan so you can understand how everything is moving forward simultaneously. So first and foremost, our mission statement, and this might sound familiar to Representative Corey because it very closely aligns with the Marijuana Legalization Implementation's mission statement when they crafted the Marijuana Legalization Act. But for the Office of Marijuana Policy, it's to ensure the health and safety of all Mainers by effectively and responsibly licensing regulated marijuana establishments. So you'll see that throughout the presentation. You'll hear that throughout the presentation. Our top priority in everything we do is to, again, ensure the public's health, safety, community safety with the regulations that we put in place to help effectively and efficiently regulate these 2 industries. And then our mission statement is to develop a good faith partnership between the state of Maine and stakeholders by establishing rules and policies that provide interested consumers with access to a regulated industry while diminishing an unregulated, untested illicit market. And then finally, our 5 guiding principles. I won't go through them all. I'll just touch upon one. You can see there again, our top priority in the work that we do is to protect the public's health and safety. 3 is an important one to point out. As far as the way that OMP conducts itself, we are a compliance first agency, enforcement only when needed. I think the proof's in the pudding now that we've been up and running for about 2 years. About a year ago, we established our first inspection-based program. And to date, we've done close to 1,100 inspections, both remote and in person. And I think with those 1,100 inspections, technical assistance has been really the guiding force there. And I think to date, we've only issued, I think, 3 revocations within the medical program. So we are compliance first. We are an educator. We offer that technical assistance because our goal is really to get our registrants and licensees into compliance. And then 5, just golden rule stuff, really just to treat everyone fairly with respect. So the Office of Marijuana Policy itself, within OMP, there are 5 main divisions, and some of these divisions have 1 full-time staff, and the largest one actually has 11 full-time staff. So most of our operations go through our licensing and compliance team. So our licensing team is headed up by Director Tracy Jakes, and she has a team of 8 licensing individuals. And their main job is on the adult use side of the house to vet the applications that come through the pipeline, work with towns and municipalities with the local authorization piece, and license those entities and establishments on the adult use side of the house. And then they also work with and register the nearly 3,000 caregivers and handful of dispensaries on the adult use side. So we'll get to some of the numbers a little bit later on, but we have about 500 adult use licenses in the pipeline. Again, just about 3,000 registrants on the medical side of the house. So you can imagine they're fairly busy. Compliance. There we go. So for our compliance team, when February of 2019, when it was really just me kind of sitting in a cross office building by myself, trying to figure out what I was going to do, when we inherited the medical program, we only had 2 field investigators for the nearly 3,000 registrants. And really, the compliance program was complaint driven. Since then, we've grown to 11. Director Vern Malik oversees 2 supervisors and 8 field investigators. And we established our first actual inspection program, which is scheduled with registrants and licensees, and we go to ensure compliance. And it's not mainly driven by complaints anymore, which is really nice. And again, leading with technical assistance and a compliance forward agency. We have our policy team. As you'll come to find out, there's no short of interest in marijuana and the work that we do. We have one individual that's in charge of the vast majority of our rulemaking, because we're always in rulemaking, our legislative agenda, and also plays a hand in a lot of our stakeholder outreach and engagement to figure out how to make the programs work best for everybody. Speaking of that, engagement and community outreach, again, we really borrowed pieces of this from the MLI committee in the time that they were serving in the legislature, understanding that these 2 marijuana programs impact communities from Kittery to Fort Kent and a wide array of stakeholders when you're talking about public health, public safety, communities, industries, schools. So we have staff on board that really that's their full-time job, is to have those conversations, bring them into the fold, so we can ensure that both programs, again, are working for all stakeholders. And then finally, our data analytics division. I'll get a little nerdy about this a little bit later on in the presentation, but we do have a team of a data analytics team of 3 individuals who are in charge of implementing and running our state's inventory tracking system, but also in the process of building out OMP's data lake and data warehouse, which I will talk about later in the presentation. So again, just starting to give you a little bit of an understanding as far as our role as a regulatory agency versus the role of law enforcement and communities when we're talking about these 2 different industries. The Office of Marijuana Policy is in charge of the programs themselves, the registrants and the licensees. We do licensing, compliance, general oversight, and we do a lot of consulting and have many conversations with other state agencies, understanding that they're impacted by both these programs as well. And then on the law enforcement side and the community side, they're really the ones that address the illicit market activity and the illicit activity that may happen within the 2 programs. So just kind of we're building and nurturing that relationship with law enforcement across the state, both at the state, county levels, but also local as well.
Okay, so just to give you guys an idea of how far OMP has come over the course of the last 2 years since it was established, I have a timeline for 2019 and 2020 to walk you through that. So as Eric said, OMP was first established in February of 2019. We spent much of the spring of 2019 participating in major substantive rulemakings for the adult use marijuana program. And that ultimately culminated with the rule being approved by the legislature in June. And then for in September, the law went into effect. And then the rules were finally adopted in November of 2019, which allowed the rules to go into effect in December. And then finally for us to have the adult use marijuana program operationalized and be able to start the process of accepting applications from licensees. We issued the first conditional licenses in the adult use marijuana program this past March. And prior to the pandemic, we were really looking at a spring launch of the adult use marijuana program, but COVID delayed that. We had to postpone the launch. One of the big reasons that we had to postpone the launch was that we had no testing capacity. The lab that was going to be our first to come online was located in a community that had not yet approved testing at the local level, and they had been scheduled to have a referendum vote in in April, but that got postponed until July. So it really meant that we couldn't keep moving forward until we had that testing capacity. So we get that testing capacity in July, and then we can start to set in place the pieces for having a safe launch of the adult use program. And so we issued the first active licenses to those licensees who had completed the local authorization process in September. And then I think about 6 weeks later, we had the launch of the adult use retail sales over the holiday weekend in October. And since then, we have begun the rulemaking process for the medical marijuana program. Having had the adult use program up and running, we're now able to turn our attention back to the medical marijuana program.
So this is an important slide for just a baseline understanding of some of the considerations that the Office of Marijuana Policy has while conducting their work. First and foremost is most of us are well aware of the conflict between state and federal law. While marijuana is still a controlled substance, Schedule I, what is deemed to be a highly controlled substance in the eyes of the federal government, even though it's legal here in the state of Maine. Really the North Star for these regulatory agencies and legalized jurisdictions across the country are the Cole and Ogden memos that have since been rescinded by the last Trump administration, but really still served as really the North Star for individuals in our position about how we effectively really operate and run these two marijuana programs. And some of the highlights of both of those memos are really put policies in place that prevent diversion to minors, put policies in place where you can do thorough vettings to make sure that the funding in these companies aren't run by criminal enterprises, put policies in place to make sure that these products are not crossing state lines, and figure out a way that you can address any driving under the influences. Really, again, just what you would consider common sense public health and safety goals.
So the adult use and the medical use programs, to draw some comparisons between the two, in both programs, the use and sale of marijuana is legalized and it is taxed. On the adult use side, marijuana is taxed twice. It is taxed, there is an excise tax and then there is a sales tax, each of them 10%, for a cumulative sales tax rate of 20%. And then on the medical use side, the medical use marijuana is subject to the standard sales tax in Maine, which is 5.5%. Prepared food items that contain marijuana are taxed at the prepared food rate, though. OMP is in charge of the licensing and registration in the two programs. But on the adult use side, we're looking at a licensing program that is based around establishments. And then on the medical use side, we're looking at a registration program that is really based around individual medical providers. The adult use program is consumer centric, whereas the medical use program is patient centric. And we recognize that these two programs have very different, they serve different populations and have different purposes. And we don't have any intention of eliminating the medical use program. These programs will continue to run on parallel tracks in the state of Maine. But that does lead us to the fact that there is a big difference, especially with regard to public health and safety between the two programs. On the adult use side, we really have a gold standard for public health and safety. And what we'd like to get to is a place where on the medical side, we have those same public health and safety components within that program as well. So you'll see on the adult use side, there's mandatory testing of all product. On the medical use side, testing is voluntary. On the adult use side, we have stringent labeling requirements. On the medical use side, the requirements are less stringent, though I will say that right now in the proposed medical marijuana rule, we are trying to align those requirements. On the adult use side, there's a universal symbol to indicate products that contain THC. On the medical use program side, there's not that same universal symbol. The other big thing is that on the adult use side, we have fines and penalties and administrative holds and suspensions and revocations to provide a progressive discipline to people who are not acting within the rules of the program. On the medical use side, the only tool that we have is revocation. And at the point that that the revocation is a year old, the registrant can apply to be let back into the program, and we have to let them back into the program. And then in the adult use program, there are 4 distinct types of establishments, and each of these types of establishments requires a separate type of licensing. So you have your adult marijuana stores, your cultivation facilities, your manufacturing facilities, and your marijuana testing facilities. On the medical use side of the, you can be vertically integrated. So one registrant could do all of the things that would require separate licenses on the adult use side. And then in terms of local authorization, on the adult use side, towns have to affirmatively allow for establishments to opt in. And it's an important part of the licensing process that OMP goes through. OMP issues a conditional license on the adult use side, and then the licensee has to take that license to the municipality in which they want to locate and receive local authorization before that license can be returned to OMP and an active license can be issued. That is not quite the same on the medical use side. Municipalities have no role over registrants in the program, though they do have to approve facilities operating within their confines. So your caregiver storefronts, your manufacturing facilities, your testing facilities, but the municipalities play a more limited role in the state registration process on the medical use side.
So just quickly by the numbers here, you can see kind of a snapshot in time, those applications that are within the licensing pipeline here for the adult use side of the house. Like I said, nearly or a little bit over now, actually, 500 applications broken out into those different establishment types. Our cultivators who grow the plants, our manufacturers that take that flower material and make a wide array of products, our marijuana stores, which are over 200 now in the pipeline, and our marijuana testing facilities, and you can more or less see where they are in the process. The yellow bars there are those active licenses that we have now. It's been a slower, it's been slower to get started, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing considering we have the distinction again of being the only state to launch a marijuana industry during a global health pandemic. We do have quite a few that are already in the 3rd phase of licensing, so I think you're going to see active licenses go out the door at a pretty high rate here over the next few weeks and months. But the green bar is where most of those applications are in the process. And what Anya was just speaking to is the local authorization step, which is the next step in the process. A lot of them are still in that stage. And we've found, and that was one of the hurdles that we needed to overcome when we had to delay the launch, obviously with towns closed or short-staffed or have higher priorities, we weren't really seeing those licenses come back to us with local authorization at the volume we needed in order to launch the industry. So as you can see, they are indeed starting to move through the pipeline. but that still seems to be the bottleneck of the licensing process. But it's moving quicker and quicker each day, which is encouraging.
So Director, while we have you on this slide, we've got a question from Representative Corey.
Sure.
Good morning, Eric.
Morning.
With regard to testing facilities, are we on track to be able to test sort of all of the marijuana that's going to be sort of used on the retail level with 2, maybe 3 stores? Is there a goal here in the number of testing facilities we're going to actually need for the marketplace?
Yeah, so this was actually one of our main concerns when launching the program. One was really the magic number, because we said publicly, again, we could, even though we had the power to, we couldn't launch the industry in good conscience without a testing facility, if you consider what our mission statement is. So one was the magic number, and we were happy to get that, and that allowed us to launch the system. Don't quote me on this, but the adult use system's only been up and running for about 4 months, and we already have 2 testing facilities, which I think would lead all states as far as bringing on testing capacity early in the process. We actually have a 3rd in Southern Maine that we think will be actively licensed and certified by the CDC by March, which will be 3, and we have an additional in Bangor, which has started the process as well. So by no means are we in the position where we need to basically throttle the industry to make sure that we don't break the system. We have the testing capacity we need. We have room to grow. We have more coming on board. So everything that ends up on the store shelves in the adult use program has gone through one of these testing facilities and been tested for certain analyte types.
And I just want to say, I think you guys are doing a great job. And, you know, in terms of, you know, talking about a slow launch, I think that you guys have also created a great regulated, you know, marketplace. So I think that even though that it might be slow, it's been a stellar launch. So great.
Thank you.
Great. Representative Tuttle.
Thank you, Senator. I had a few questions. The first is your compliance officers' locations. Are they regional? Or are they all in Augusta?
Nope, they're regional. So on the compliance side, again, we have the director, Vernon Malik, who oversees 10 field investigators, and they work remotely from their homes, and they have been assigned certain regions. So we have coverage across the state from north to south. And 2 of those field investigators are actually field investigator supervisors, which manage those north and south teams. So yeah, we break it down in north and south, and they are regionally based.
My next question is, when and where do you do your inspections, and do you have a normal schedule?
That'd be a great question for Vern Malik. We do it on a regular basis. Again, we do have that inspection program where each field investigator is assigned a certain number of inspections to conduct per week. And that what makes it difficult is that was up and running. It was smooth. It was great on the medical side. We were doing a great job, and now you're bringing on this whole other industry. So as far as capacity to ensure that we're getting everybody, we have limited resources, but they do a good job. And I will say what's been a challenge, but they've pulled it off, is we inspect every single adult use licensee before issuing an active license to ensure they're in compliance with their security requirements. So great team, 11 people. But when you consider that at the end of the day, we have close to 500 licensed establishments on the adult use side and 3,000 on the medical side, we're hoping that team may grow in the future.
Well, how many fines and penalties so far?
On the adult use side, we've only taken 1 administrative action, which resulted in a fine, and we're going through the administrative appeal process currently. And then on the medical side, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but again, with those 1,100 inspections, both remote and in person, I think we've issued 3 revocations.
Well, my final question is, what percent of reimbursement to municipalities, considering I'm a city councilor in Sanford?
That's a great tax question. I don't know if I want to defer to on your MRS, but as of right now, the tax revenue that we generate goes 2 places. 12% of both excise and sales tax goes into OMP's Public Health and Safety Fund, in which we're using to implement our public health and safety campaign and also law enforcement training, and the rest goes directly into the general fund.
Well, I'd like to see that revisited from my perspective.
I think you'll get that chance. I believe there's at least one or two bills that address that.
Yeah, there's several bills this session.
Yeah. There's usually a bunch that do a municipal revenue share. They all head down to tax, I think.
Mhm.
So
Director, if you want to continue. Thanks.
Sure. So this slide is by the numbers, giving you an idea of our medical program, our dispensaries, our caregivers, caregiver assistance, and our patient certifications. And really what we're trying to highlight here is in 2018, the legislature passed LD 1538, which made some significant changes to the program, essentially fully commercializing the caregiver model, allowing for caregiver storefronts, unlimited caregiver employees, and also removing the pre-qualifying conditions to become a medical marijuana patient. So you can see the exponential growth both in the caregiver assistance and also those patient certifications since 2018. And here's just a real quick snapshot of adult use opt-in communities. When the legislature built out the MLA, they made it an opt-in program. So communities across the state actually have to take a proactive stance and pass ordinances to be able to opt into the program. And we continue to see more towns come on every day, which is great as far as ensuring access to marijuana in the adult use industry. But here's a snapshot of the number of towns that have opted in and opted in for what types of establishments that are in the adult use program.
So the Office of Marijuana Policy has 4 bills that we have submitted to the legislature for this coming session. 2 of those apply to the adult use program, 2 of them to the medical program. The first in the adult use program, an act to amend the Marijuana Legalization Act, is very much the same bill that got caught between the committee and the floor upon adjournment last session. The major thing that bill contains that's of primary interest to folks is the unlimited transfers of flower and trim between the medical program and the adult use program through January 1, 2022. The bill does contain some other things, but they're primarily cleanup items, definitions, fixing a little minor thing with sales tax registrations. So that will be a familiar bill. The next, and I'm not sure whether this will go to you guys, I tend to think that it will actually go to the taxation committee, is an act to clarify provisions regarding the marijuana excise tax. And what we discovered as we approached launch early this fall was that a lot of folks who are processing marijuana are harvesting it in a wet form and process and flash freezing it. And so that wet weight marijuana, it weighs a lot more than your dry marijuana that has all of the water content removed from it. So what this bill does is it creates a conversion rate between the wet product and the dry product so that you're taxing them equitably.
So, Anya, if I can hold you on that bill.
Yeah.
I think we have a question on that one from Representative Corey.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, I still have a question on this. I haven't been following this for about a year, but I was never a big fan of the excise tax anyways. I know that Colorado does an excise tax, and a big part of it is that they adjust quarterly for what the price of flower trim and other things are within their market. Like, I still think a straight sales tax would make a heck of a lot more sense than this excise tax idea. Are we still stuck with a flat rate for each one of these items within the tax, or do we have a way to adjust it based on the market value of those different products?
That's a good question. We have an ad valorem excise tax, so it's based upon the weight of each of those products. So it's a flat per pound rate.
But it's also fixed in statute, right? We don't actually adjust it based on the market rate of.
Nope, the rate is absolutely fixed in statute currently.
Yeah, I still think that's problematic, but that's not you guys, that's us. So thanks.
And just to jump in here real quick, as Representative Corey, you'll remember this. I believe the policy reason for putting that excise tax in was to have a consistent flow of tax revenue being collected by the state, as opposed to just a sales tax that fluctuates drastically. So it was a little bit more predictable. But we'll certainly have that tax conversation here in this upcoming session for sure.
And then moving on to bills that apply to the medical use program. The first is an act to make technical changes to the medical marijuana use, the main medical use marijuana act. This bill was seen by the HHS committee in the prior session. It adds some definitions that were lacking, that we needed to operationalize things. The other thing that it does is it creates a registration process and fee schedules for caregiver retail storefronts. The legislature established caregiver retail storefronts, but previously didn't go so far as to put some structure around them. So that's what we have done. And the same goes for growing by plant canopy, which was actually a bill of Representative Corey's a couple of years ago, to make it so that licensees or registrants could register by plant canopy rather than plant count. And so that sets up a fee structure for those folks. And then our final bill is an act to amend the Maine Medical Use of Marijuana Act. This bill, what we're asking the legislature to do here is to establish that progressive discipline schedule like exists in the adult use program. As I said earlier, at this point, the only tool that we have to deal with bad actors is revocation. And so what we'd like to have is the ability to fine and the ability to place administrative holds on products, and then ultimately the ability in really bad instances to have permanent revocation of registrations. I will say that what we have done with the fines to make them reasonable is we've set them at a proposed rate that is 1/10 of what they are in the adult use program. So we've really recognized that these are two very different programs, and that the adult use program is geared towards consumers, and the medical use program is geared towards patients. There's also some tiering within those fee structures to account for the fact that within the medical use program, you have very commercialized operations, such as your caregiver retail storefronts, but you also have individuals who are acting more as the original program laid out, and on their own. So those fees are adjusted to take that into account. Sorry, those fines, not fees.
All right, medical use of marijuana rulemaking. You may have heard that the Office of Marijuana Policy is in the process of updating the rules and that govern the medical program. I alluded to it earlier as 1538, and a number of different bills have been passed by the legislature since 2018 that have changed the program and how it's structured and how it works. And the last time those rules were amended were before that in 2018, which predate the Office of Marijuana Policy. So we're in the process of updating those rules to mirror public law, but also bring in some of those, what we think are common sense public health and safety requirements over to the medical program. So some of the legislative changes which we're obligated to update into the rule are local authorization. Right now, they're, again, Anya did a good job describing that the caregiver model is not necessarily, the communities don't have a role to play there. However, the legislature did adopt local approval for caregiver storefronts, dispensaries, manufacturing facilities, and testing facilities. So that's going to be a new part of the application process. The inventory tracking system. So that is currently up and running on the adult use side. We've been legislatively directed to update and implement that in the medical program, which is an incredibly important piece as far as transparency within the program, helping to identify product that is in both regulatory systems and product which falls outside of that regulatory system, and also the data that we get from that system in order to make smart data-driven decisions around rules and legislation, excuse me. We were directed by the legislature to align the packaging and labeling laws, which we are doing in this draft rule, which from a public health perspective makes a lot of sense. And again, we've taken that tiered model, understanding if you're a fully commercialized business, that you need to have all those requirements, but pulled back on some of those real patient-centric, smaller caregivers that are providing medicine for the patients that are most at risk. And then some that we weren't directly in legislation, but we have the authority for the rulemaking as we're pulling across some real basic security requirements. When you're talking about locks, commercial grade locks on doors and windows, video surveillance, alarm systems. And again, we're taking a tiered approach, again, with both those commercialized establishments versus the individual home-based caregiver. So we know that there was obviously a substantive debate at the MLA committee when putting those requirements into place with a wide array of stakeholders. Have the benefit of working with that committee to understand those. And then you may have seen in the news that there have, over the last summer, there was, seemed to be on a weekly basis, robberies of caregiver delivery drivers and robberies of caregiver storefronts. So really protecting the registrant from property damage, stolen property, stolen money, and also the community safety issues with products now going into the illicit market. So working there. And then finally, implementing an operating plan as part of the application process. Basically transparency designed to tell us within your vertically integrated model, are you growing? Are you manufacturing? Are you selling? What are your growing practices? If you're manufacturing, what types of solvents are you using? Are you compliant with your packaging? How do you plan to sell? Are you going to have a storefront? Do you do deliveries? Are you appointment-based? Really just a little bit more transparency piece, and why this one is so important too, talking about the size of the industry itself, 3,000 caregivers, 8 dispensaries with only 10 field investigators. We'll be using it also as a compliance tool, understanding that there's registrants in the program that the Office of Marijuana Policy or the state won't see maybe every other year, maybe every third year. So at least during this step of the process with this transparency, we can understand at the time that we register these individuals that at least they're displaying to us that they are operating in compliance.
Great, and we have a question from Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had a couple of caregivers that have contacted me recently regarding the latest coming out of OMP regarding the video surveillance and needing to have audio surveillance in addition to the video. Is that something, they've both said this to me, so I'm trying to figure out if that's something that you are putting forward or if it's just video surveillance.
So it's video surveillance. And what we're doing right now, we have the proposed rule, which I'll get to the process earlier, where we put out not a proposed rule, excuse me, a preliminary draft of the rule with all of these requirements and an informal public comment period to get that type of feedback that we needed in order to move forward with a better rule. So right now we did pull over the security surveillance. And again, we're making adjustments in the rule, understanding that we need to handle different segments of the medical program a little bit differently. Again, the commercialized side versus the home-based caregiver. But yeah, we are moving forward with the video surveillance side.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Director.
Next slide. So this is just to kind of outline the process in which you're using with this rulemaking. So first and foremost, that we have already gone through and conducted, again, an informal public comment period. Understanding that there was going to be significant interest in these rules, we wanted to make sure that we had the most robust stakeholder engagement possible moving through this process. So before we even entered into the official rulemaking process, we made our preliminary draft public and gave a week for individuals to go through that and supply us with comments. So again, we can have the best rule possible when we start official rulemaking. We've done this for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, the success we had using this process with the adult use rulemaking. Second, we wanted as much public feedback and stakeholder engagement in the process as possible. So we've given the additional touch point for them to help us craft the rules. And again, we want to come forward with the best rule possible that really works for all stakeholders. And when I say that, again, it's the public health, public safety, communities, and the industry themselves. So in that process, we received over 1,500 comments. We have vetted those comments one by one, and are in the process of updating the rule. For the sake of full transparency, that document that we have cataloged and tracked all those 1,500 comments will be made public when we make public our proposed rule. So individuals can go through, see every single comment from the 1,500, see what they're proposing, who proposed it, and our response, whether we accepted it in part, or did not accept it, and the reasoning for the Office of Marijuana Policy's action on that individual comment. Again, for full transparency and to make this process work for everybody. And then finally, after we're done that rule, after we've incorporated the changes, after it's been thoroughly vetted by the AG's office, we will move forward with what we call a proposed rule and start the official rulemaking process. It'll be made public with a 20-day notice, at least a 20-day notice of our public hearing, which is another opportunity for stakeholders to insert themselves in the process. And then even after that public hearing, there will be an additional 10-day public comment period. Again, just to make sure that we have a robust stakeholder engagement and make sure that we have the best rule possible moving forward.
Great. Representative Corey. I think Representative Corey, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. You may have answered this, Director Gunderson, but of these rules that are being proposed, how many of them are routine technical and how many major substantive?
So the rules under the medical program are routine technical.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I think we can go to the next slide, Anya. All right, immediate next steps. So what we're doing now and throughout 2001 are obviously the medical rule, getting that through the rulemaking process, adopting that rule and starting to implement the requirements in that rule. Obviously, once we get to that point, there are substantive changes. So it's more of a communication challenge for us with the industry itself, so they understand our approach to implementation. Obviously, we can't snap our fingers and have all 3,000 registrants be in compliance. But again, leading with that technical assistance, we'll work with them to get them to where they need to be after we finally adopt the rules. What's often overlooked with legislation and rulemaking is operationalizing. So we are building out our licensing system on the medical side to have it fully online, much like the adult use program. Implementing a statewide inventory tracking system for a fully mature industry has a number of challenges, but we have a team that's working on implementing that large IT project. And then again, building out our compliance systems, which our field team uses when they do their inspections. After the legislative session, we're going to enter into what we call phase 2 of the adult use system. We're going to go back and take a look at our regulations. Obviously, with the system up and running for almost a year at that point, we'll have substantive conversations, again, not just with industry, but a wide stakeholder group, and refine those regulations to make sure that we can find efficiencies in there, remove any regulations that might not have the benefit that they originally served, and try to figure out a way to adjust the program that, again, makes it work for all stakeholders. I know we're a little bit over time, but I have to talk about our OMP data lake and data warehouse. So this really puts Maine at the forefront of a lot of these marijuana agencies across the country with our goals and what we're trying to do with data. So as I said, we're building out a data lake and a data warehouse where we can pull in and store all of the data that we come across in the work that we do. That's data that we bring from our inventory tracking system, our licensing system, our compliance system. And every week we're having conversations with agencies across state government and also community-based agencies as far as public health and safety that may have marijuana-specific data, in which we can use to pull into our data lake and data warehouse. And at that point, you can take all of these data points and use them to answer some very difficult questions when you overlay all of that data. If you see school expulsion rates increase in county Y, you can really take a look at seeing the inventory tracking, licensing, and try to figure out answers to these complicated questions in order to make data-driven decisions when trying to improve both programs. So a little bit nerdy, very exciting, but that work is in process. And then finally, obviously, we have already talked about what we're moving forward with our legislative agenda from the department and all the other marijuana bills that this committee will be considering. So again, 30,000 foot. This is a view of our five-year strategic plan. Obviously, last year, operationalizing the adult use program and all the systems involved. This year, really with an eye towards figuring out policies and a way to expand access to the medical and adult use programs while figuring out a way to start bringing the illicit market, getting that reined in. 2022, management optimization. 2023 is a deep self-reflection as far as how we can make the programs work better and identifying gaps in those systems. And then 2024, implementing those policies in order to hopefully get us to our ideal state, which I think is the next slide. And our ideal state is to have a what I'll call a fully compliant medical and adult use system, again, with the medical use being patient-centric, adult use consumer-centric, testing within both programs, access for all those that need it, that ongoing working relationship with law enforcement across the state, both state, county, and local level, and have that fully built out data warehouse contributing to our decision-making process and making progress, towards eliminating illicit market. And I think it's important for this committee to understand, and I think a lot of you probably do, but as far as eradicating the illicit market, it's not something that we can just snap our fingers and happens overnight. This is something that's going to take years to build towards. And if you look at some of the other local, legalized jurisdictions, very few have actually gotten to the goal of even getting close to eradicating the illicit market. But I think within 5 years, if we can assure that a high percentage, well more than the majority of marijuana that moves through Maine is actually moving through our regulatory systems, that would be a huge win for the state of Maine.
And Director, we have a perfect question from Representative McCrate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director. This is really helpful. A couple questions. Will the inspectors be the same for both adult use and marijuana medical, or are you adding different people and different training?
Nope. So all 30 employees at the Office of Marijuana Policy are cross-trained in both programs. So our compliance team does inspections on both the adult use side and the medical side, and the same with our licensing team. They license and register both programs. Obviously, that presents unique challenges because from a high level, you can see the vast differences in the programs. We've been directed by the legislature to slowly, and where it makes sense, to align those programs for public health and safety needs, but also for the sake of administering both programs.
Thank you. And one other on the rulemaking. You mentioned several of the pieces are legislatively driven, and the others are coming from the OMP. Is there a report back included when the rulemaking is final?
That'd be a good question for Anya. I don't know if she knows, but they are routine technical. Although I hope many of you had seen the memo that we had sent out, and understanding that you are now the home to all things marijuana, and then obviously with the HHS committee, being the committee of jurisdiction for the past 10 years for that program. We will continue to put out those memos so you can follow it along in the process. So the next time you'll hear a communication from us is before we make the proposed rule public, and we will provide you with a red line draft, the new draft, and hopefully a brief memo, although we have a hard time writing brief memos over here, as far as updating you on the process and also those significant substantive changes we've made from the draft rule to the proposed rule.
Great. Thank you very much.
Chairman Chiazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Gunnarsson, for the presentation. As a data geek myself, I definitely know the value of good data and the use of it. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't say I'd like to know what's in place for privacy and security issues for personal data and things like that. So you don't have to answer it here, but certainly something I'd like to know what protocols and plans are in place to protect data, or are we scrubbing it, or how are we managing that? So thank you.
Yeah, and we can most certainly put you in contact with our Director of Data Analytics, because he would be able to answer all those questions for you. Everything that we do certainly advised by all of Maine IT's policies when it comes to privacy, and we work in a collaborative relationship with them on all of the projects that we do. So I will certainly connect you with him.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Representative Tuttle?
Yeah, where are you located?
We're at 19 Union Street. We've moved 3 times since February of 2019, but we're hoping we found our permanent home not too far from you folks on 19 Union Street, a short walk across the street.
Well, it's hard to hit a moving target, right?
That's a good point.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? Is there anything else either of you would like to add, or?
I would just say, again, thank you for the opportunity. This is very high level. I'm sure we could have a conversation about both programs, which would last weeks. And as we move through this process, obviously there's significant interest in both of these programs, but just please use Anya and myself as resources if you have questions. We will obviously do everything we can to get you answers in a timely manner.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric and Anya, for coming in and presenting today. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot soon and much more in depth as we deal with legislation. So,
absolutely. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Great. And so next up on our agenda, we're going to move over to BABLO, the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations. And it looks like we've got a few people from BABLO, as well as Anya's sticking around from DAPS. So we can turn it over to Director Greg Minio. For those who haven't met him, he's the director of BABLO and I believe the chair of NABCA, the Nationwide Association of Control States. So,
well, not quite yet. Thank you, Senator Lucchini. May actually that takes place, but I'm focusing right now on sharing my screen. Let me see if I can do that. Let's see here. Fine. Let's see. Hang on one second.
And it looks like we also have Tim Poulin and Mickey Boardman also from.
Yeah, Tim Poulin is our Deputy Director for Liquor Operations, and Mickey Boardman, our Deputy Director for Lottery Operations, and of course, you know, Anya Trundy. And I'm having issues with sharing my screen right now. Just give me 1 second, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, take your time. We can take a minute to get it going.
Sure. Let's see. I'm assuming I'm able to do this. Let's see.
Looks like we can see your screen now, but it's.
Yeah, I just got to get to my desktop real quickly here. Let's see. There we go. We only do this every day, all day, right? And okay, this should be coming up right now. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see that?
We're still on your email.
We're on your email, Greg.
Oh, okay. All right, let's see here. Well, try this now. Rather than take too much more time, maybe one of the other guys could share. Well, hang on, let me just try this there. No, that's not working either.
It looks like it may have frozen on.
Okay.
If you want, if Janet has this, she can
yeah,
share.
she does. Then of course, then she's driving and I'm not advancing. But I guess that may have to work. For some reason, I'm looking at it, but it's not sharing.
Sometimes it freezes on a screen. It looks like it's frozen on your email.
Yeah. Let's see if this does it. Let's try one more time. No, that's not it either. I apologize. What would you recommend, Janet? Would you recommend doing it, or can I ask Tim or Mickey to try on their end? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I think maybe Greg, if you can end your screen share, and then we can try to reboot it.
Let's just try that. Okay,
Here
so
we
we're
go.
back here. So, what would you recommend? Just start over then?
You can, if you'd like, if you have it up, you can try it, and then if not, maybe we can get Janet or somebody else.
Yeah, let me try this one more time here. Okay, there we go. Now let's see if that's working.
There we go.
Ah, hey, all right. Well, sorry about that. Let's go slideshow. Okay. All right, sorry.
No problem.
Gosh. Well, thank you very much, Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, members of the committee. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to get together, even in this very unique way. And it's really a pleasure and honor to present our organization, the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations, commonly referred to as BABLO. As Senator Lucchini mentioned before, I'm Greg Minio, I'm the director. And we've got Tim Poulin and Mickey Boardman with us today, and Anya Trundy, of course, and we're all going to take part somewhat in the presentation. So I think with that, we'll just kind of get right into it then, if that's okay. One last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everybody, I think you know this, that BABLO is a department within the Department of Administrative and Financial Services. And I present to you today on behalf of our Commissioner, Kirsten Figueroa. So with that, let's get started, and I'll go to the, there we go to the mission slide. I'm not going to read every word on every slide, and neither are Tim and Mickey. However, I think this slide is important that we do set the tone, and I would like to read every word on this one if it pleases the committee. So we always like to start off with, first and foremost, we're a customer service organization. We're very unique in state government in that we manage and regulate two distinct business units, and you'll hear more about that in a couple minutes. But our mission, the Bureau, the State Liquor and Lottery Commission, and our partnerships with Pine State Spirits, Scientific Games International, our lottery retailers, agency liquor stores, and all the liquor licensees throughout the state are committed to providing the citizens of Maine with outstanding customer service and superior products. And the Bureau also has an important responsibility of enforcement and licensing and liquor and lottery licensees in Maine. So I just want to hide this right there. There we go. Okay, that's all right. That's fine. All right. We have oversight, like every other department and our agency has in state government, of course, and it starts with Commissioner Figueroa. I mentioned before. She leads the way for us, and everything that's certainly substantive runs through Anya and Commissioner Figueroa. We also have a commission. We have the State Liquor and Lottery Commission. It's 5 members who are appointed by the governor with state senate confirmation. They serve 3-year terms, and they provide, in a broad sense, financial and operational oversight. Really quickly on our lottery business, they review and approve instant games and game rules. And within our liquor business, mainly spirits business, they review and they approve our spirits listings, which are, and also the shelf price. So when you see a new item appear in one of our 600 agency liquor stores, you'll see that that has been thoroughly vetted presented to and approved by our 5-person commission. And of course, this committee right here that I'm presenting to today, our Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, that I've been happily and proudly working with for going on 7 years right now. So that's our oversight. So we do have people keeping an eye on us, that's for sure. As far as the organization is concerned, I mentioned before I'm the director. Just for people who don't know me, April will be 43 years in the liquor business. And I've been with the Bureau and the state government for going on 7 years now. May will be 7 years. And I'm still, I would say, fledgling as far as lottery business is concerned. Only going on 7 years in the lottery business, a very unique industry, and I learn every day from people like Mickey Boardman. Tim Poulin has been doing this type of thing a long, long time now, 35 years with the state. February 1, next week, I guess it is, Tim will have been with Bablo for 11 years. It's become our resident expert on all things liquor in Maine. Mickey Boardman, 20 years with state government, all with Bablo, and 30 years in the lottery industry. Before working for the state, he worked in the private sector and actually worked for one of our lottery vendors. So as you can see, we have a lot of institutional knowledge right there. I will also say that in our appendix, I think it's the first one up, we've got an org chart that you can take a look at your leisure, and you'll see our members of our 38 strong. So any business that you would manage, whether it's in the private sector or public sector, always has vendors, partners, and stakeholders, and we're no different at the Bureau. So we have qualified, vetted contractors who work with us, and our two main contractors that we work with are Pine State Spirits, which is a division of Pine State Trading, and I believe most of you know who they are. They're headquartered in Gardner, but they have the state liquor warehouse is actually right next door to our old offices on Water Street. A large campus there, 14, 15 acres, and it's an amazing, very modern warehouse. And they've been doing this with us and working with us alongside us since this new business model was started in 2014. So they've got two contracts with us. They have our warehousing and distribution contract and something we call our trade marketing contract as well. Scientific Games International is one of 3 of the major gaming vendors worldwide. We like to think they're the best, and they've done a great job with us, and they've been with us for many, many years. So those are our 2 main vendors that we work with, and we have many, many partners. I'm not going to read them all. A couple ones that come to mind, though. Blaze Partners is our advertising agency, Maine-based in Portland, Maine. Actually, I think they're in Falmouth now. iBet Creative is Portland, Maine. They do a lot of our digital work and everything for us in our spirits business. Fuse Ideas as well in Portland does all of our lottery advertising and social media. And then we have a sundry of national state agencies, trade associations, and the like that we work with. And I've only listed a few there. I only put them down there on this slide just so you understand that a lot of moving parts and a lot of stakeholders in our business. This is getting into some of the numbers now. I picked up at the end of the last presentation, and not unlike our friends at OMP, we're very much like this. We're numbers driven, we're data driven. And what I can say at this slide, it's very simple. This is the monies that we have to work with in a given fiscal year, this being fiscal 21. These are our budgets. So by sector, you'll see the budgets there for our operational activities, which will be contracts and FTEs and things like that, and cost of goods right down the line. It just takes a minute to explain that operations is pretty self-explanatory. Cost of goods, though, you probably would understand that as well. But when you get the lottery, it gets interesting. And I just wanted to remind the committee on a couple things. But cost of goods simply is what we pay our suppliers for spirits. So when you see your favorite national and local brands on the shelf in the agency liquor stores, you'll see that we had to buy those from our suppliers. And we buy those to the tune of $135 million in the given fiscal year. So our spirits operation is about 147 million, 148 million, call it rounded up. Liquor licensing and enforcement, we have about $1.5 million to work with there. And our lottery operations, over $300 million, but you'll see very clearly that most of that, the predominant amount of that is $316 million. And that's what we call cost of goods sold for lottery. And that's very simply, that's our prize winnings. So when we look at the prizes that go back to players, that's considered cost of goods sold. So it's very unusual and different in our lottery business. It does not mean necessarily what we pay for the paper or cardboard to print tickets. It's actually the prizes we pay back out. So having said all that, we have almost just short of $500 million to work with. And by way of, and I'll sort of preface this, by way of over $500 million in sales for spirits and lottery. Let me get this out of the way here. I think that's shown. Sorry. We will throw off and we will transfer these amounts of monies in the way of profit. And if you look right across the board, you'll see spirits operations. We thought it'd be interesting for you to see the history of the past 6 years. So, and we did it this way because with the spirits business in particular, the first full fiscal year of the spirits new business model started in fiscal year 15. And you'll see the trajectory there for the spirits business going from $46 million up to $60 million last fiscal year. Lottery operations has grown accordingly, 54 million to 64 million. Licensing and enforcement is pretty much, it's different. It's the collection and processing of excise taxes and licensing fees. And the only reason you see a little bit of a dip there is because in the past year during COVID, we've had a deceleration, if you will, on number of licensees just due to the issues surrounding COVID. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I think this paints a good picture. We'll talk a little bit more about how revenue is dedicated, but very quickly, I can tell you that with the spirits business, you probably do know that through 2024, or at least through June 30th, 2024, the profits from the spirits business go into our liquor revenue account and right on to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank.
Hey, I'm on Zoom for Legal and Veterans Affairs.
Oh,
Can I call back?
Tim, we hear you. That's all right. It goes to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, and that's to pay down the bond, the debt from the hospital debts that were paid off in 2014. And we're on track. We're actually ahead of pace to actually do that. So we're in good shape there. A lot of your operations are a general fund account, and licensing and enforcement is the same thing. So that's our profit picture. And with that, I want to go into liquor operations, and I'm trying to keep pace because I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. I don't want us to lag behind, and we'll have time for questions at the end. So let's take a look in a little more depth. These are a lot of words on one slide, but I'm going to touch on some things that I think are very important. First and foremost, it's important to know that Maine is one of 18 control jurisdictions, and I believe many of you know that. And the control model has been around since the repeal of prohibition in 1933, when the federal government said that each state can regulate and manage the commerce of alcohol beverage products in their own way. It would not be necessarily federally regulated, at least not to a large extent. And Maine is one of 18. There's actually 17 states and one county. That's Montgomery County in Maryland. There used to be 19, and that was the state of Washington. And we commonly like to say they flipped in 2020, and they experimented with going to what we call a licensed state, which would be the opposite of a control state. That experiment, at least in my opinion, did not work. It promised lower prices to the consumer, and it didn't happen. And one of the only benefactors of that was Idaho, because they got a lot of that border business. A licensed state, as I mentioned before, is like Massachusetts. I think most of us are familiar with Massachusetts, and all that means is that the wholesaler in Massachusetts, there's many wholesalers, and they're independent and they're private. And suppliers sell through wholesalers onto retailers In Maine and other control states, the only common element of control states, all 18 of us, there's a lot of iterations, but the only common element is the fact that the state remains the wholesaler. So we maintain and support the three-tier system, but the three-tier system, in this sense, the second tier is the wholesaler, and that's the state of Maine, and that's what makes us a control state. The sale of spirits, really, we consider it an enterprise fund. I mentioned before, everything goes through the Maine Municipal Bond Bank. We're the exclusive wholesaler. We generate revenue for agency liquor stores, which means that we pay them commissions. We'll talk more about that a little bit. And our mission, as always, this is our sort of our mission statement just for the spirits business, is to offer a wide selection of spirits products at a competitive price and encourage our Maine legal drinking age consumers and visitors to buy local. And I always like to get this in and not necessarily go down across that border and go south to that state down there, because we're trying to keep our customers here. And we mentioned before about Pine State 2 contracts. The other thing I will mention, and Tim will get into this a little more, is that within the trade marketing contract, Pine State has 5 sales representatives and a sales manager who go out and work with our licensees, in particular our agency liquor stores, and their sole purpose is to promote our brand, and we'll see that in a minute, and that is Maine Spirits. So we'll just flip that slide, and you'll see right here. So if you take the Bureau and you add it to Pine State Spirits, we manage the state's brand. And I put brand in quotes because that's something that was developed right before I came aboard, actually, it was done in early 2014. And this is our forward-facing brand, and Maine Spirits is what we've been developing. And this is what the retailers, licensees, and consumers see and are exposed to on a regular basis. Now, here is our supply chain. It's about as simplistic, I guess, as it gets, but it tells the story. And the only thing that needs to be updated here would be that it shows our old office there. So top left, you see where it all starts. That was the old Bureau office up till about, well, I guess it was like 6-7 months ago, something like that, we moved. And that's on 10 Water Street, right next door, actually, to the warehouse where Pine State is. So the vision, the direction, strategies, and decisions come out of the Bureau. The first tier, I mentioned the 3-tier system. The first tier is always a supplier, and there's our nice photo of a distillery. There's our supplier. By the way, we work with about 85 suppliers, 85 spirit suppliers, most of which are out of state. Those are our large national and international concerns. And we also work with about 22 in-state distilleries in Maine who are doing a great job. If you move on down the line, you see the arrow going to the right. You'll see that's our truck that Pine State handles for us. Pine State would be considered proxy for the state in this sense as the wholesaler in the way of distribution and warehousing. You go down right below that, you'll see the retailer. You see the shelf on the retailer, and that's the 3rd tier. And I guess if you go to the left, sometimes we talk about 3A or 4. The 4th tier really would be the consumer. And there's any one of us who would like to go in and purchase a product, a spirits product in one of our 600 agency liquor stores. They'd go into the store and make their selection. So that's our supply chain. And this is what we commonly refer to as our report card, the ultimate measuring stick. And I'm proud to report that we had a great fiscal year 2020. I showed you earlier the 6-year history. But if you go right on down the line and do the math, it's pretty simple. So when we transfer, we saw that $62 million that we transferred last fiscal year. That goes right through the liquor revenue account, and then they'd split it up, goes to the bond bank. The first thing that the bond bank has a responsibility to do, of course, is to pay the debt service for that given time period. And as anybody knows about bonds, those numbers are all dictated by the yield at the time. So in fiscal 20, $26.8 million was devoted to debt service. We had a transfer of $20 million to the general fund. I'm going to ask Anya to jump in on that in a second. But the other thing that is constant and has been and will be throughout the 10-year deal is that we have a cascade. with DOT, DEP, and DHHS, and that has to do with roads and water. And that will never exceed 7 million, and it has to do with a federal match of the same amount. So if the feds come up with their 7 million, so to speak, there's a lot more to it than that. We come up with ours, and we've done that every year, as a matter of fact. And then at the end of the day, there's always a retention. So there's usually something left over. Now, I think I would say, and by the way, 8.4 million was retained in fiscal 20. Cumulatively, I'm trying to say, through fiscal 20, we've got $58 million sitting there that will be something up for a discussion at the end of the 10-year business model and actually paying down the bond for the hospital debt. Anya, are you there? Would you mind jumping in and just touching on the 20 million for last year, please?
Yeah, happily. So the 20 million that was transferred last year to the general fund was previously in that cumulative amount held by the Maine Municipal Bond Bank. And so that was transferred for the purposes of balancing the budget. And what I will say about the cumulative amount that is currently held is, you might remember that liquor revenues were part of the curtailment package that the governor presented in late August, early September, and it proposed using funds from that cumulative amount that is currently held in at the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, but that is a proposal that can't be acted on unilaterally. That requires approval by the legislature. So that is in the supplemental budget now that the AFA committee is looking at currently.
Thank you, Anya. Appreciate that. Yes, I think I see a question.
We have a question from Representative Tuttle.
Representative Tuttle, yes, sir.
Now, when is the 10-year contract up, and when do we start renegotiating that?
Great question. It is up June 30 of 2024. As far as when, we've already had some initial discussions with Senator Lucchini, Anya and I have, and we know it's not too soon to start talking about that. This would be something that would certainly fall within the legislature's hands and the administration. But I think this will take time. This will definitely take time. And we know from the regulator standpoint, we know this has been working. This model's been working regardless of where the funding has gone. But the way we're going to market, it has been working. It's up to us now, Representative Tuttle, to give some recommendations through the administration to VLA on what we'd like to see this look like on July 1 of 2024. And to be perfectly frank, it's going to be someone's decision to basically present what do we want to do with $60 to $62 million a year. And I think that's a nice place to be, because this business is not slowing down. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Well, it does. I know that Representative Lucchini and I were involved with negotiations 10 years ago. And I was very active in getting money for the hospitals. But I think based upon where we are financially with the pandemic and other issues, I would hope that we would have time to do it properly. And I agree with you. We've done a very, very good job over the last few years. And I think that you have a lot to do with doing that. So I congratulate you on doing a pretty good job.
Thank you. I will take pretty good any day of the week. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, a lot has to be discussed, no doubt about it. So thank you for that. I don't see any other hands, and I'm being mindful of time. I'm going to turn this over to Tim Pullen. And Tim, you'll just let me know when you want me to advance slides for you. And Tim will get into some of the nitty-gritty here, because he's responsible for managing the business on a day-to-day basis. So Tim, take it over.
Thanks, Director Minio. Members of the committee, glad to be here today. I apologize. I thought I was putting myself on mute. Apparently I'm not controlling that, so I apologize. My wife was calling me about a plumbing issue. So So first up, let's talk about the products that we get. In the appendix, we have a breakdown of some of our best products, and I'll touch on those in a few minutes. But first of all, it's how do we get the supplier to notify us that they want to list a new product? So together with our National Association, NAPCA, we created an online listing process by which the supplier goes in and gives us certain information about the product. It's submitted electronically to us through the Pine State system, and then between the director, myself, and our spirits operation manager, we review those products and determine whether or not they're going to be presented to the commission. And through that process, we have a pricing calculator that, based on the price the supplier wants to charge us for either the case or the bottle, we then mark it up to set the retail price by which we will sell it to consumers once approved by the commission. And so the commission approves and reviews all of those at every monthly meeting that we have. And then ultimately, once the product has been approved, it ships to the Pine State warehouse here in Augusta. So there are three sets of really pricing. It's the everyday price that you see at the retail at your favorite location where you buy your spirits. Together in conjunction with the suppliers, we put those products on special. The only exception is Allen's Coffee Brandy never goes on special. We don't need to put it on special to sell it. But we're putting about, between the supplier and Bablo, we're putting about $9 to $10 million. Most of that, about 26% belongs to Bablo, but most of that rests with the suppliers on that pricing discount. And that helps drive our sales. And then finally, under the pricing category is that each quarter, there's a price adjustment process. And so most of these requests come from the suppliers based on, in the last year, it's been price increases due to tariff increases. So think about Scotch coming over from the UK. Those tariffs have been substantial. And so some suppliers have managed to keep their prices in check, while others have felt it necessary to increase their price to offset that tariff cost. So those are approved by the commission monthly. And at the same time, we delist products. So we're listing on average about 40 new items a month. Some of those are brand new into the system. Some of those are flavor extensions. So for example, Smirnoff might come in, which is a vodka, might come in with a new flavor. Or it could be a size extension. Maybe Smirnoff has a 175 liter or 750 milliliter, and they want to list the liter. So it's a variation of what is coming in each month. But at the same time, on these quarterly price adjustments, we also get rid of or delist those items that have the suppliers have stopped producing or we're not getting any sales, and there's no sense of and they've been no sales for a number of years. So when I get to the warehouse, hopefully at some point in the next year when this COVID thing goes away, we'd love to invite you down to the warehouse and give you a tour. Some of you had a tour a couple of years ago, but it's 155,000 square feet of storage space. We receive 9 to 10 trucks every day. So trucks start arriving and unloading at 5 a.m. And so 5 a.m. to about 11 a.m., trucks are being unloaded. Relatively, the number of cases in inventory, about 225,000. And so those are active products. We have around 4,200 SKUs in the warehouse, and some of those are being picked. Some of that inventory is backfill, so that we don't run out of items to be picked on a daily basis. Twice monthly, Pine State generates purchase orders back to the suppliers, and so everything is a depletion. So when everything in the warehouse belongs to the supplier. The state doesn't own the product in the warehouse, and the only time we take title to the product is when it's put on the truck and moved to the agency liquor store, who then takes possession of the product. So it's a bailment warehouse. We charge the suppliers for everything that we do to touch that product, from moving it off the shelf to putting it in an inventory to moving it around, to if it's coming from outside of the United States and needs to be stickered for bottle redemption, that's the bailment product. But twice a month. So when we deplete it and we sell it to our agency liquor store partners, of course that's tracked, and twice a month we send purchase orders to the suppliers who then return an invoice for those cost of goods, which we then pay. We bill the suppliers for bailment, cost of goods, and depletion allowances. So when we talk about depletion allowances, if you go back across the page when I talked about monthly pricing and the suppliers and Bablo work collectively to reduce that price, the amount that the supplier owes us for that depletion allowance or that monthly special that they committed, say they committed $2.50 on a bottle of Tito's vodka, then for every bottle that we sold, they owe us $2.50. And so we bill them for that cost. And then finally, we have a very robust IT system that manages our inventory. So real-time inventory, both here at Bablo, Pine State, and all of the broker suppliers who have access to the system can see real-time inventory. You can go and look at a specific SKU and see that we have 455 cases, and of those 455 cases, 48 are committed that are going to be put on orders for agency stores. This is where we get all of our sales reports that we do. We look at weekly to help manage the inventory, help to manage sales, and understand where we're going. And you can see in the appendix on slide 40, there's some more information about the warehouse that you may want to review. Next slide. So this tells us our landscape of agency stores. So we have a total of 600. And you can see the chart here of Maine, and all those green dots represent those 600 stores. Don't count all 600 dots because I tried it and I'm not sure I got them all. So we have 5 wholesale clubs. So BJ's and Sam's Club. BJ has 2, Sam's has 3. Chain convenience. So we're talking about Big Apples, C&. Brown's, Circle K's, Cumberland Farms, Maritime Farms. We have a host of both Maine-based chains, convenience store chains, and New England-based and national chains. The grocery chains makes up 2. Hannaford, which has 63, and Shaw's, which has 20. And when we speak of Hannaford represents about 24% of our total sales out of those 63 locations. So they're an important partner in our business. Independents, that's just about everybody else. Wherever you, like I live in Sydney and I have a little store called Annie's Market. Annie's is an agency liquor store just a half mile down the road from me. And then we have 43 Walgreens that are also in that mix. The last bullet here, we have our largest reselling agent. So of the 600 agency liquor stores, there are about 223 of them that have a separate license to resell to bars and restaurants. So the state doesn't directly ship or sell to bars and restaurants. And so we license these 223, but 17 of them really make up the bulk of that. Bow Street Beverage in Portland has the biggest reach around the state. I think in fiscal year 20, they had about $15 million in sales, followed by RSVP, which had about $9 million in sales. Damon's in Augusta, Waterville, and Bangor, Stompers in Holden, Ruper's in the Lewiston Auburn area, Bob and Mike's in Saco, JD's in Waterboro, Bootleggers in Topsom. So those are the ones that generate the most money. And you can look for that full listing of our best our top 10 retailers on slide 41 in the appendix. And then just talk about products just quickly for a moment. And if you look on page 37 in the appendix, you'll see that our top product by case sales, and we report them in 9-liter cases, that's the equivalent standard of when we talk about beer and wine, that's all in gallons. Spirits are in 9-liter cases. Allen's is the top product at over 99,000 9-liter cases, but they are number 3 in total dollars. Number 2 in total 9-liter cases at 79,000 is the brand Tito's. Tito's Handmade Vodka, based out of Austin, Texas. They're number 2 in case sales, but they are number 1 in dollar sales. And the third top is the Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey brand. They are number 3 in total 9-liter cases at 69,000, but they are number 2 in dollar sales.
Great. We have a quick question from Representative Chiazzo, if you have a second, Tim. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry, Mr. Poulin, for interrupting. Just a quick question on the reselling agents.
Yes.
Are they geographically based, or is that just pretty much an open market in the state?
Yeah, that is just an open market. Anyone can apply for that. There's no restriction on that, as there is with regular agency stores, which are based on population for that municipality. But anyone can apply. It's a $50 annual fee. Like, for example, all the Hannafords are in that category as a reselling agent, and they do it because of out of convenience, where there might be a bar or restaurant local to a Hannaford, late, well, not that late anymore, but later on a Saturday night, they run out of Tito's. They can go to Hannaford, buy it off the shelf, identify themselves, and there's a protocol by which they can buy that product from a Hannaford. But it is not geographical. It's an open market for that.
But you have to be an agency store, right?
That's correct. That is the only requirement. You must be an agency liquor store.
Gotcha.
And the bars and the restaurants pay the shelf price, not the sales tax. So
Correct.
There's no difference in price then.
Right.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah,
I'll let you move on there.
Yeah, and so on slide 38, you'll have, you can see our top 10 products. So just to show you how much Tito's has grown, Tito's has 3 of their 5 SKUs in the top 10 items in sales. It's a huge brand. It's the #1 vodka in Maine. It's the #1 vodka in the United States. And Director Minio can remember in his previous life on the supplier side, when he was based in Dallas, they heard about this Tito's vodka, and this is not a direct quote, but they kind of said, "Yeah, that's not going anyplace."
Yeah, we kind of scoffed at this guy in Austin, Texas. This was the pre-runner to the craft movement, and we thought, who's he think he is? Well, I think we found out who he is. Very successful.
Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
So now I want to jump from the spirits business into the regulatory side of our agency, liquor licensing and enforcement. So all of the funds that we generate, as Director Minio stated previously, all the funds go to the general fund. Those are excise taxes. So excise taxes are collected from our beer and wine wholesaler partners and the in-state manufacturers, and the licensing fees. Our prime objective in basically our enforcement and compliance is to educate and guide our active and potential licensees on conducting their business within the framework of Maine's liquor laws. That's really our goal. Anytime we can work with either an existing licensee or a potential licensee, keep them on the right path to being a good citizen, a good corporate citizen in the sale and service of alcohol, that is our primary objective. If they don't come into compliance, then we have other resources to use to gain compliance, but we want to help them stay in business and stay on the right path. We issue licenses and permits for sales, service, and manufacture and the distribution of all beverage alcohol. And we have administrative authority only over our licensees. And for other non-administrative authority, or in addition to the administrative authority, we also have a memorandum of understanding program with about 110 law enforcement agencies around the state that we try to partner with to help us keep track of our licensees and to respond to issues that happen in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So here is our licensee count over the last 6 years. And as you can see, going from 14 to 15, we had, a substantial increase, 33%. And you can see the rest of the years there. But when we get to FY20, you'll see that there was no increase. As a matter of fact, there was a decline. I looked at I reviewed the number of licensees that went out of business in fiscal year 20 and compared it to the last couple of years before that, and didn't really see a significant difference in the number of licenses that went out of business. The one thing that is still reflected in, that's not reflected in here is that through a process that we've been working on the last 10 months of COVID, is to allow some licensees, most of them are seasonal ones. So think of folks who are have a seasonal business on the coast or in the mountains, depending on the seasonality of their business, that opted not to open. And so instead of putting them out of business in our system, we just put them on hold because they want to come back into business. They just want to come back in business when they think they're able to do that successfully and be able to work in the business that they've worked in some cases for many years. So this is just a reflection of, you'll see it in the next couple of slides, of just a flattening out of activity in most of the state, except for one particular area. And these numbers don't include some types of other licenses and permits that we issue for tasting events, incorporated civic organization events, catering events for clubs and other types of restaurants, self-sponsored events for catering events, festivals, tasting festivals, sales representative license, importation permits, and sacramental permits. So some of those are in the system, some of them are not. And that's something that we're working to try to make a change on, to have everything run through a collective system. I think it's important to note for you that this month, we have 5 inspectors to cover the entire state, and I'll talk about on this the next slide, but we had 2 of the 5 inspectors retire. And we have a 3rd that's out on an extended medical leave. So all intents and purposes, we're down to 2 inspectors plus our manager to cover this very large state that we have. Next slide, please, Director.
If we can, we have a quick question from Senator Farron.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Senator. Tim, you just mentioned those numbers about the licenses, right? About some folks that have chosen voluntarily maybe not to open up. But I know just from, in Skowhegan and some of the folks in my district, you've also got some of those Class A lounges, right? The licenses that they haven't had an opportunity to reopen. And I know you folks have worked with them about suspending their licenses while they couldn't do it. So it's not necessarily just voluntary, but also because of the situations and the restrictions put on by the governor, correct?
Yeah, so the Class A lounge is a good example. So that is the closest thing in our licensing scheme that we have to, that we would consider a bar. They have a very, 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 very low threshold for food. Basically, if they have a microwave and Hot Pockets, that qualifies for their food. So they're the only type of licensee that we have that really is a bar. And so under the governor's mandates, they are not allowed to have inside service currently. And so we've worked with, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, we had about 118 Class A lounges, and some of them have converted to another type of license so that they could survive COVID and have inside service because they had the facilities to do that. And when I say facilities, they basically have the kitchen requirements that are necessary to produce the required food for a different type of license. So a lot of them converted to a Class A restaurant lounge, which has a higher food threshold, but they had a kitchen to do that. So so we work with them to do that. But again, we have some that don't have that ability. They don't have the environment to do that. And so they do have that restriction that they can't have inside seating. And some of them have put themselves on hold. And just to be perfectly clear, we do not have the authority to suspend any license. And so if they've chosen not to be in operation, then they've told us that, and we're more than agreeable to put that notation in the database and talk to them around their, when some of the restrictions ease up, or they decide they want to take they figured out some other business model that they can reopen. we're happy to work with them to do that.
Thank you.
So thanks for that, Senator Farron. So the state's divided into 5 inspector districts. Our largest is District 5, which covers 14,000 square miles. And so here's the breakdown. So District 1, which is coastal Cumberland and York counties. So think about Brunswick to Kittery, east of 295 and 95. And so even, so in FY14, there was 1,400 licenses that were issued in that territory. And that has grown through FY20 at 9.8%, still growing. This district, our inspector's out on a long-term medical leave currently. District 2, which is inland Cumberland, York, Androscoggin, and Knoxville County. So imagine west of Kittery, from the bottom of Maine to the Canadian border at Oxford County. Again, over close to 1,000 licensees, but we've had a 7.55 loss in licensees in that time frame, in that 6 years. District 3 covers Franklin, Kennebec, Lincoln, Saginaw, and Somerset counties. This county now has, that inspector has retired. We're at a 2.19 loss in the number of licensees in that territory. District 4 is Hancock, Knox, Waldo, and Washington counties. Again, that is down 2.9% since fiscal year 14. And finally, District 5, which is our largest geography at 14,000 square miles, is Aroostook, Penobscot, Piscataquis County, and again, almost an 8% decrease in the number of licensees. And that is the second retired inspector that we have. So we're actively in the process to get approval to fill those 2 vacant positions. But that's not a short process to do. So we're trying to manage the best we can with that. So now I want to talk about some of our responsible business practices. So when it comes to the spirits business, we actively are working, there's always on our website and website especially, there's resources there with anyone who believes they have a drinking problem, or for parents who want to talk to their children about non-consumption. Responsibility Org is a organization that we're going to start working with closely to enhance our social responsibility practices. But some of the things we've done recently is the radio host, Blake from the Coast 93.1. He did a video message for us to talk to parents about underage consumptions and talking about the resources on responsibility.org. We had a personality from WGME 13 that did the same thing. On the radio, we've done a number of messages about underage consumption, again, talking about the resources on responsibility.org. And then generally on our Maine Spirits website, as I mentioned moments ago, there's resources on our website to do that. And all social media has some ongoing messaging about responsible consumption. And then with a look at licensing, we have a number of programs that are for seller server education. We have 3 municipalities in the state, Portland, Bangor, and Acton, that require anyone who's selling or serving alcohol in their municipalities to have a certification. So a number of years ago, we developed an online tool that gets used, but there are other resources on our website that help folks find the right resources for seller server education. And I will return it back to Director Minio.
Great, thanks, Tim. Senator Lucchini, Representative Cayazzo, I know we're a little tight on time. This seems to happen every 2 years when we do this, but I don't want to give short shrift to lottery. So if you'll indulge us, we'll just continue on. And then I think we're taking questions as we go. So I think that's working, but thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll try and get through my slides relatively quickly and top line this before I turn it over to Mickey Boardman. But
Great.
when we talk,
Greg,
yes,
before
sir.
you get into it, we have another quick question.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't see that.
Sorry, Representative Tuttle.
Yes. Yes, sir. I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're on mute, Representative.
How's that?
There
Good.
you go. Yes, sir.
Well, I remember when Tim Poon was hired. What year was that, Tim?
At Bablo, it was in 2010, but my first job was at the Secretary of State's office in November of 1986.
Well, that's pretty good. Mine was 78, Tim, so I guess I date myself. Who was your first director?
Well, my first director here was Dan Grodowski, and of course I worked.
God bless him.
I worked for him for 10 years. For 10 years when he was Secretary of State. So.
Yeah, well, Tim, I always tell a story that my grandfather had a still during the Depression, and he was laid off at work, and he had to support 8 children. And I always said that I think he'd sort of have a kick that I was on this committee.
That's good. Well, you know, it's interesting. This business, the liquor business in America, was really, in a weird way, started by bootleggers, wasn't it? And the company I first worked for was the old Seagram Company, and that was headed up by the Bronfman family. And Mr. Sam, as they called him, Sam Bronfman, well, he was known to be a bootlegger in his day, but he did something very smart. He hoarded and stockpiled barrels of whiskey in Canada during Prohibition, and he knew he was ready. So as soon as that fateful December day in 1933, he just simply, well, wasn't pushing a button back then. He probably called somebody and said, "Let the barrels roll," and that was really the beginning of the industry, the legal industry in America. So,
well, him and Joe Kennedy, right?
Well, I wasn't going to say Joe Kennedy, but he was right there, right there along the way. But you mentioned Dan Grodowski. I knew Dan, and real quickly, I'm honored to follow in his footsteps, not only as the director of Bablo, but Senator Lucchini was nice enough to mention that I'm the incoming chair of the NABCA, our trade association, and Dan served in that role for a year. We all have a year term, and I'm honored to have followed his footsteps. No one has come from Maine to serve in that capacity between Dan and myself, so it's an honor. So with that, let's get in. Yes, sir.
The last question is, who are our 5 commissioners now?
Well, we've got Larry Davis from Gardner, from Hollowell. Sorry, from Hollowell. We've got Julie Sheehan from Cape Elizabeth. We've got Patricia Rice from Vesey, and we've got Betsy Fitzgerald from Tim, help me out. What town in
Machias, I believe.
Machias, or Machiasport, maybe Machias. Yeah, one of the two. And we're short one. We Mr. Orland McPherson, you may remember, Representative Tuttle, retired a few years ago, and
well, 30 years, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. And so we've got a spot to fill, and we're actively working on that. So, but thank you.
Well, I'm going to nominate the chairman of the committee for that.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Be careful with that one, right?
I know. Yeah. I'll keep quiet.
Right. Yes, sir. So on the Maine Lottery, so our mission is to offer a wide array of entertaining games. Really, this lottery is part of the entertainment business, and it's really something that consumers of legal age have to make a decision on where they spend their entertaining dollars. And it kind of, crosses over into what's been going on the past year, hasn't it? Where our lottery business has been so robust. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are making decisions based upon, well, not being able to go out to dinner, not being able to go to a bar, not being able to go to a movie or a show. And maybe a little bit of those dollars have been going the way of lottery. So we're thankful it's been done that way in a responsible manner, I'll add. It's a general fund account. We do have the outdoor heritage. We have one instant game that is now a $3 game by statute, and it goes directly to the grant program within IF&W, and we're happy to be partners with them. And any given year, it's $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 goes to that grant program for all these worthy causes for the environment and wildlife. Scientific Games, I mentioned before, is our gaming vendor. Fuse Ideas is our advertising agency. We're part of the Tri-State Lottery Group, the very first multi-state lottery group in the country, started in 1985. The multi-state lottery group is 38 jurisdictions, 36 states, plus Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands. Those are primarily the original Powerball states. And I always like to throw this in because it's very important. For 4 or 5 years now, we've been proud sponsors of the Maine's Teacher of the Year. We work with Educate Maine. We're very proud to be a sponsor along with Hannaford and a lot of other great companies within Maine. So with that, very quickly, we'll talk about the supply chain as it is in the lottery business. It's pretty interesting that tickets are printed in Alpharetta, Georgia. You see the top left. They go on trucks, shipped to Gardner, Maine. They go to the warehouse in Gardner. Orders are taken by the Scientific Games people in Gardner, delivered by UPS, and they go right to our 1,200 lottery retailers. Pretty simple, clean process, and it works for us. And we've got a great partner in Scientific Games, and of course, Mickey and his team do a wonderful job managing the overall business. I like to show this slide. I think it just sort of tells the picture, and I call this our financial shares slide. You can call it really almost anything, but I think what it shows very clearly is how monies are dispersed and how they're used. And you'll see that large gray area. You can't help but see it, can you? $213 million in fiscal year 2020. That's over 2/3 of our sales go back to players. So our winnings are 2/3 of what we bring in. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. A lot of the other slices on the pie, you see the 5% there, those are our contracts with Scientific Games and Fuse. We've got our outdoor heritage game. We talked about that. Unfortunately, it's been down a little bit. And our general fund transfer, $64 million in fiscal year 20. We've got our administrative expenses at 1%. That's very clearly, that's just our FTEs, our operational expenses. And the other one we're very proud of talking about is our 7% that goes to our 1,200 lottery retailers. That's about $21 to $22 million a year we pay our retailers for commissions. We pay them between 5 and 8% based upon the type of game that they sell for us. Anything there? It has a lot in one pretty simple pie, but I wanted to share that with you. I don't want to take too much of Mickey's time. Just real quickly, let's take a look at what we sell. And this is very global, but I think it's striking to see all that blue. You'll see that we sell $251 million in instant tickets. We know those as our scratch tickets. And that's 80% of our business. 16% of our business is the draw business. We all know about draw this past week. If you've been paying attention, you saw some of the big wins. A lot of us are thinking, oh yeah, I wish it was me. But we had a couple lucky winners. We had somebody in Maryland win Powerball, $730 million the other day. And we had a big winner in Michigan who won $1 billion on last Friday, I think it was, on Mega Millions. So you'll see 16% there. And Fast Play is our kind of our hybrid game, and that's about 4% of our business there. Instant to draw, that 80-20, if you will, is a little offset this year because of what I mentioned with the increase in instant game sales. But that is pretty much the mix and the split you'd see in any lottery jurisdiction across the country, maybe not quite as dramatic as we have it here. So that's a good example of what we sell. And I'm going to turn it right over to Mickey. He's going to talk about who we sell to. So Mickey, sorry for taking so long. It's all you now.
No, that's quite all right. And thank you, Director Minio. And I'll be brief. I know we're running behind on time here, so I'll be quick and certainly happy to answer any questions. I will mention that there is a lot of more information in the appendix that you can kind of look at after, and I think that will be helpful. So as you can see from the chart, this is really just county sales data. No surprises really when you look at the number of retailers and you look at their sales and their percentage of sales, right in line with what you would expect. The areas that have higher populations have more retailers. Places with less population have fewer retailers. So no surprise there. If we go to the next slide, Greg. This is just kind of a map. We have roughly 1,200 retailers across the state. This kind of maps them out. And again, no real surprise there. It's just a visual of the locations of those retailers. And again, the higher locations, the higher population, more retailers, more stores. The majority of them are convenience and grocery stores. They're your Circle K's and your Big Apples and your Cumberland Farms and Hannaford and Shaw's. So that's really what makes up the majority of our retail base across the states. Next, Greg. Advertising, we're just going to talk just briefly about what the lottery does for our advertising. We use very much a high level of traditional advertising, television and radio. That is, the two big ones, and they still are, even with the streaming and all of the Hulu and satellite and those types of things. And of course, the internet and social media is becoming more prevalent as well. So we do have a social media page that we use to communicate with players about new games that are coming out and winner information and such. We use some streaming services, and we also have in-store, we have digital displays within each store that we can show information as far as new games, winners, jackpots, and that type of information. So the little image on the right-hand side there is just from one of our television spots that we did with our tri-state partners. It was a fun spot. It was some folks in a motorcycle repair shop reading the numbers and realizing that they had won, and a lot of folks do play as groups in offices and such. So next slide would be good, Greg. So one of the things that we really focus on, and we understand that yes, we're an agency that the lottery is designed to generate revenue for the state of Maine, for the citizens. To be used, and we know it gets used for great programs that help a lot of people in our state. But we also understand that we have a strong responsibility to make sure that when we are selling lottery, that we're doing it in a responsible manner. So we really put a lot of effort into our responsible gaming campaigns. We work with the Maine CDC. We work with our national organizations. We print on all of our tickets the Keep It Fun, Play Responsibly. We create special responsible gaming advertising that we actually buy time. They're not just PSAs that we give to the radio stations or the television stations to say, please run when you can. We actually spend money to buy airtime to run those specific spots. One of the newest ones that we've done is really related to not just responsible gaming, but about resources and recovery. So it's a great spot. Hopefully, if you haven't seen it, you will. We'd be happy to share any of that certainly with any of you folks if you'd like to see it. But we're always, like I said, we're always promoting that responsible playing, especially we had the big high jackpots, and we had a lot of information out there at retail on our displays saying, play responsibly, only takes one ticket to win. And we really want to make sure that people just have fun. And if it's not fun, certainly people shouldn't be playing. So, and the next slide, please, Greg. Another thing that I think most people are very surprised to hear is that the Maine Lottery is part of the Amber and Silver Alert program throughout the state. We're very proud of being a partner in this. We've been extremely fortunate that we have not needed to use the Amber Alert system, which is for children that have been abducted or gone missing. It's a very strict criteria before the state police will launch an Amber Alert. It's a little less strict when it comes to Silver Alerts, and we've had several of those over the years. The one that I have posted up here, I think it's certainly, we were excited. We were really excited because as you can see, this gentleman was missing. And they put out a Silver Alert. We put out their pictures. So every store across the state has an image on their display. So if you were to walk into a convenience store or a store, any store that sells lottery, you would see this image. It's static, it stays up, and it says there's a Silver Alert and this individual is missing. If you see him, please contact 911. In this instance, as you can see from the quote, it says Mr. Bossy has been located safe and sound in Scarborough. A convenience store clerk recognized Mr. Bossy's alert photograph sent to the lottery machine inside the store. So not only do we participate, but it's proven and it works. And we were part of helping to locate this man who was missing. So we were very, very excited that we were able to do that and play a small part in finding this gentleman. So, and I think that's all I have. Greg, if you want to go to the next slide, I think you're going to take it over.
Thank you, Mickey. Before I do, that was kind of quick for Mickey, and I just feel bad a little bit. But is there any questions on lottery? And there's a lot in the appendix. We tried not to, clog this up in the presentation as much. There's so much to tell. As you can tell from the two business units, we have a lot of moving parts. Not unlike any other commercial enterprise, we have a lot going on, and there's so much to tell. So. Senator Lucchini, do you see any questions from the committee?
At the moment, no. Are there any questions from committee members for Mickey or Representative McCrate?
Hi, Representative McCrate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks.
Great.
Just a quick question. Can you just define draw, fast play, and instant? So I'm sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're so ingrained in the industry that we don't really explain what that means. So draw games are just like it sounds. They have a drawing associated with them. So like your Megabucks game, your Powerball game, your Mega Millions game, where you would go and you would either buy what we call easy pick or a computer pick, and it would select numbers for you. And then we would draw numbers and you try to match numbers when the drawing takes place. Instant games are often referred to as scratch tickets. So if you're thinking scratch tickets, that's what an instant game is. So it's a pre-printed game that has random winners throughout the game. You buy it, it has different play styles. Some have different themes. And if you look in the appendix, I did provide some images of some of those different play styles and games. So you buy it, you try to scratch it off. Oftentimes it's match your numbers to the winning numbers, win the prize or something like that. And a fast play game is something that's kind of a hybrid of the two. So a fast play game, excuse me, is a game that you buy it at retail, similar to buying a Powerball or a Megabucks ticket, where it prints out of a machine on a piece of paper. But basically what it's doing is printing a game that plays like an instant ticket, and it's an instant win. So there's no scratching involved, but you buy it, and typically for security reasons and other things, they will be what we call extended play type of games, where you can't look at it and just say, oh, it's a winner. You have to really play it out. So it just prints on regular lottery paper, so to speak, which isn't regular paper, but it prints on regular lottery paper, and it might have like a bunch of letters, and it might be a crossword game, for example, and you just have to go and find them. But instead of scratching them, you just find them. So that's what a fast play game is.
Great question, though. Thanks, Mickey.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, fast play is one of the hottest subsegments in the lottery industry across the country. It's been going very well in Maine. In the short time we've had it, we've been up 50 to 60% year on year on fast play alone. It's a very interactive, very vibrant game, and our players like it.
Thank you. That helps.
Great. Well,
you're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that, let's go to emerging issues and opportunities. The chairs and the committee asked us to address some things, and while we can talk all day about these types of things, we thought we would take a look at some that are front and center, and let's do that we'll look at it by business unit, and really within liquor operations, the one that is, well, again, front and center, really looms large, and with what we're doing is our modernization effort that Tim Poulin is leading. Right now, in the liquor licensing department and excise tax collection department, we are a paper-driven organization, unfortunately, and it's been that way for quite a while. We have dabbled a little bit in some of the applications and whatnot from an electronic standpoint, but we're nowhere near where we want to be. And we have embarked on an effort, and we're calling it our modernization effort. And it's going to be converting electronic files for excise tax applications, permits, and at the end of the day, we'll be eliminating paper files. It's probably going to be a 1 to 2 year project. We'll be working with an outside company, and we'll be possibly going out to RFP at some point to engage with somebody, with a winning bidder. But we've got plenty of resources already in the state, companies that are working with other agencies that we're speaking to. We're talking to somebody who's working with MRS, for example. And I want to mention that we're being guided by and supported by the Project Management Office as part of OIT. They're doing a good job working with us, kind of keeping us in focus on what we want to accomplish. So that is really the largest opportunity, I want to call it. It's an issue, but opportunities come out of issues, don't they? So that's under liquor operations. Under spirits operations, Representative Tuttle touched on this before, and rightfully so. Yeah, these liquor revenue bonds retire fiscal year 2024, as I mentioned, June 30th, 2024, along with the contract with Pine State, that ends, that expires. And long before that, we need to do a lot of due diligence, a lot of work on what do we want this to look like afterwards. And as I mentioned before, speaking somewhat selfishly, but being as close to the action as anybody, I've seen what this business model has done in the past 6.5, 7 years, and we're very proud of it. We like to think of this business model as one which goes to market in an orderly and responsible fashion. That's been my mantra early on when I first came on board, and we've done a good job with that. So that's something we're going to keep top of mind as we move forward. So that's certainly something that is going to be taking up our time, probably beginning this summer. The other thing that, and we'll talk about it on the next slide in more detail, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what is life going to look like during coming out of COVID when it comes to our spirits and really all of our liquor operations. And that's something that we've been working very closely with during COVID in the past year, really since the very first executive order in mid-March of 2020, with all of our guidance memos, and we're proud of the work we've done in supporting the governor's executive orders. Back to lottery operations, we have another contract that's going to expire in 2022, which is next year. And that's with Scientific Games International. And this has been a long-standing contract, and one we are now just starting early discussions on what do we want to see coming out of the new contract, possibly with Scientific Games, possibly going out to RFP. As you know, with contracts and the bidding process, everything is always a balance between deliverables and cost. And so that's what we're looking at there. So those are the three large buckets, I would say. And then I'll go to one last slide and we'll take some questions. We want to talk about during and after COVID. What are the issues, opportunities that we will be facing and that we want to address? In liquor operations, there has been some legislation that's been done, and certainly executive orders on extending provisions made to support the on-premise community. One example is alcohol products to go. You hear a lot about cocktails to go and beer and wine in the manufacturer's container to go. There'll be legislation that we're going to be addressing this session. So there's a lot that we'll be working on and looking at coming out of this 2020 COVID period and moving forward. We know there's a lot more that will need to be discussed. We have been big proponents of bolstering certainly the on-premise community, these struggling bars and restaurants, and how difficult it's been for them. And there's many, many things we've done that we would continue to look at. Accommodations made to the entire licensee community concerning fee structure, applications, renewals. We touched on that earlier, where if somebody has been basically inactive and has had to shut their business down, and they have essentially a liquor license that they've not been able to really use it. We've been accommodating with Larry Sanborn and his team and working with these licensees to help them through that period. And when it comes time for renewal, we've been able to tack on and will tack on that unused time onto the back end of a renewal period if there's certainly something to substantiate that they've actually been closed down. These are just a few of the things that we've been doing and some of the things that we'll continue to want to look at and entertain legislative proposals for our in-state manufacturers. We've got 150 to 160 in-state breweries. We've got 20 some odd wineries, 22 distilleries, all who have been struggling, and mainly because they have not been able to work with and serve their customers indoors for the most part. Rightfully so, though, because of the mitigating of congregating of people. So we're trying to help them. We're trying to look for ways to help them and ease their burden. So these are things that I think we'll be looking at and under liquor operations and lottery operations. This is something very near and dear to us, and it really also applies to liquor. We call it continuing a measured approach with our field representative retail group, calling on stores. We're very concerned and careful and measured, as I say, with our 11 lottery field reps that go out there on a daily basis. We don't want to put them in harm's way. Mickey's done a great job with rotating them and pulling them back when we feel like numbers are heightened in particular areas. And we've actually done the same thing. Tim and Larry have done a great job with our liquor inspectors, doing something very similar. And as part of that with lottery, we've been rotating and actually doing appointment only, I'm trying to say, sorry, for ticket claims coming to 19 Union Street. So somebody can't just pop in. Now they still do, they still try and do that, but at any given time, we have not had more than 2 people in our lottery lobby. And they are keeping a safe distance and certainly wearing masks when they come to claim their prizes. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. As I mentioned before, with liquor, spirits, and lottery operations, and then also concerning COVID. I think that's my thank you slide. So I will, Senator Lucchini, Representative Cayazzo, I'm happy to entertain questions. And Tim and I and Mickey and Anya would be happy to answer any questions. And by the way, if we don't have time today, you've got our contact information, please reach out. So I'll look for any hands in the air, and we can certainly do the best we can now.
Great. Well, thank you, Director, and thank you, Tim and Mickey, as well, for the in-depth slides. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? I know we've kind of asked them as we've gone. Representative Wood.
Yes, hi.
Hi, yes, ma'am.
Director Minio. Up until the last 5 minutes, I don't think I had heard any mention of beer or wine. And I was starting to realize that. And so my question up until 5 minutes ago was, does this fall under the liquor area? And is it handled in the same way? I mean, beer and wine doesn't go to a warehouse through Pine State, does it? Wouldn't that go directly to stores?
Well, it does and it doesn't. It's a great question, and probably something we should have addressed early on. So beer and wine is in what we call the private sector. The state does not sell beer and wine. So the control state model has no really application to the commerce of beer and wine. The beer and wine is sold. It still adheres to the 3-tier system. So you have beer and wine manufacturers in state and out of state, and they sell to private independent wholesalers in the state of Maine. You may have heard of Nappy, Valley, National, Central, Pine State, of course. Sorry, Pine State's the number one. They take title to it, Representative. They then sell it to the stores and bars and restaurants.
Okay.
So that's beer and wine. What we do as a bureau and as a regulator with beer and wine is we regulate the commerce of it. We certainly are involved in legislation for that industry. We collect excise taxes, and we guide and educate in any way we can. The only real difference there is that we don't take title and we don't sell beer and wine. Now, there are some control states, just as an FYI, like Wyoming and Utah out west, where they actually control the sale of beer and wine as well, where they do take title to it and they actually warehouse it and sell it. We just don't do that in Maine. The only thing we take title to in beverage alcohol and sell is spirits, which is really commonly known as liquor, but to make it even more complicated, in statute, liquor means all beverage alcohol, which is interesting. But so I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes,
Good.
it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be planning kind of another more specific breakdown presentation from our analyst, Janet, just to go through the regulatory structure and the laws, just to give everybody a little more of a briefing, probably next week, I think. Because those questions are exactly why, great questions. So
yeah, it's a very complex, both industries are very complex. There's probably a few more moving parts in the liquor industry. Both are highly regulated industries, but yes, Representative Tuttle, I think I see your hand up. Yes, sir.
We put my picture back on. Just for the chairs, I have to go and do some business up at City Hall. So unfortunately, I have to go now, but I've really appreciated the presentation. I think the Liquor and Lottery is doing a great job, and I'm sure that with the leadership of the folks that we have, it'll continue. But the chairs, members of the committee, I will, but next meeting is Thursday, correct?
Wednesday,
okay. Yep. I will see you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you. Any other questions, Senator?
Seeing none. Greg, would you be able to take down your screen share just so we can?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I can do
the
that.
Full panel.
There we go.
Great. Thanks. Are there any other questions? Okay, great. Well, seeing none, I think that'll be it for our presentation from Pablo. Thanks to everybody for coming in and explaining. You guys have done a great job. So
thank you. Thanks. Look forward to working with you.
Great. Yeah, I think we'll have a number. It looks like we have a number of bills. So
I think I counted 18, Senator.
All right.
All right. Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And so I think that will conclude the briefings portion. Up next, we have kind of an optional briefing by Janet for anybody who's interested. Janet, if you want to explain kind of a helpful presentation, especially where we're moving to electronic format on where you can find stuff and how.
Certainly, I was planning to go through a little bit more of the websites, not a lot more, but I showed you last time sort of where OPLA's materials will be and where we post briefing materials, etc. But maybe you don't know where to find testimony and things like that. So I was going to show that to you briefly, very briefly tell you about Sam and my role during the process, but spend most of the time after that. I'll use the bills we're going to hear next week as an examples of just if you're not as familiar with how the bills are printed. For example, you may not realize when it says repealed, it doesn't ever show you what law is being repealed. You have to go find it later, so I can help you go find it. If we were in person, I'd print all the repeal laws out for you and put them on your desk, and Karen would put them in your folder. I can't do that now, so I just want to show you how to find those sorts of things and understand what it means if it says sponsored by versus presented by versus reported by different people on the front page, just some things like that.
Great. Thanks, Janet. So we'll move to that. And for those who aren't able to stay on, Janet, our next meeting is Wednesday. Is that right? At 10?
10:30, I believe.
10:30, my bad. Yeah. So this Wednesday at 10:30, we've got a briefing on some rulemaking, the process, and then the Department of Defense, Veterans and Emergency Management will come in around, I think 11:30. So it'll be another agency briefing. So any questions before we wrap up the briefings portion, or any questions generally? Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. I'll turn it over to Janet to take over with her briefing.
Okay, I won't be offended if you leave, but the people who want to stay, that would be great. And if you find out later how terrific it was, then you can watch the recorded YouTube. When I did this in the 129th, only one person wanted this introduction. So literally I will not be offended, but I do hope that it's helpful if you do stay online. So I'm going to share my screen to show you again. Back to the website. I put it on the correct monitor today, so hopefully you actually see it. We went over this website a little bit before, and I'm going to remind you how you find the information on the VLA committee. You just click this committees button right in the middle. You will then go down. Remember, best is last. That's always what you have to remember for Veterans and Legal Affairs. And then we will be on the page for the VLA committee. If you remember, right up at the top, it shows people how they can watch our YouTube stream in case any of your constituents ask you. That's where you can direct them. What I didn't tell you last time is all the public hearing notices and work session notices are distributed not just to you electronically by email, but also they all go out to an email mailing list, and we call it the interested parties list. So if you see people talking about that, that's the email list people sign up for. If you know people who want to sign up for it, that's also, the sign up is also right here on the committee page. They can click on mailing list and they'll be brought to a place where they can subscribe. And then they'll receive all of our notices. And when I'm given permission to share certain documents, I'll copy them. So for example, for Wednesday, the agenda and the briefings, I'll send all of those materials to the interested parties list and to you all directly, and then they'll be posted online. So then the reminder, we click on committee materials. If you want to see what would traditionally be handouts, but are now all things that are posted online, I'm going to zoom this up a little bit because it's pretty small. If you have any questions, it's really hard for me to see you because of the share screen mode, so just interrupt, I won't be offended. And then orientation materials are right here. I am briefly, very briefly going to go through the one I skipped over on the first day because I didn't know if more veteran legislators didn't necessarily want to go through it. But this handout, this flow of legislation through the committee process, this is drafted for a non-pandemic committee process. So this is the in-person version. So for example, it says right at the top, the bill is printed and the clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate suggest a reference. Well, that's what happens in the regular times, and then it goes to the floor and the legislature votes on where to refer the bill. As you know now, that's not happening because you're not meeting as much. So the reference process will be the clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate will decide where the bill should go, and they'll refer it themselves. This is provided for under the joint rules. They aren't going rogue, don't worry. If there's any question, there's a whole process in place for how to maybe change where the bill is referred. And I've been told by the clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate that if there's any question themselves among where the bill will go, they just aren't going to refer it, and they'll wait and have the votes take place on the floor, just as they typically would do in a non-pandemic session. If you have questions about the reference process, it's important for you to know that it's not the nonpartisan analyst's function to recommend to you where a bill should be referenced. But if you want to know where have similar bills gone in the past, that's a kind of thing we could answer for you. But Sam and I can't tell you that we think you should or shouldn't have the bill. It's something that is considered partisan. The next thing after it's referenced, the bill's sent to the committee, and then there'll be a scheduling of a public hearing. This is the job of the chairs, if you remember from last time, but the analyst does help the chairs in organizing all of the different committee work and making sure bills are scheduled eventually. And they'll be scheduled 2 weekends in advance, and they're published in the paper and sent out to the interested parties list. And the email also goes out to you all as members of the committee. During the public hearing, some people sometimes wonder, what is it that the analyst's doing? Or if we're in person, I'm sitting in a little desk behind you, and you might think, oh, she's just there checking her email because my computer's open. But it's not actually true. We take detailed notes of what's happening during the public hearing. We write down any questions you might have for the people who are presenting, or every once in a while, people ask questions for the analysts to look up, and we'll do our best to find the answers. We also note any concerns that you all have expressed or that people testifying have expressed about the proposal, and any suggested amendments that somebody might discuss. We will note that down, and we'll retain that information for you and present it to you at the work session. In this remote world, what's different about the hearing? People can't just walk into the room now to testify. They'll be signing up in advance. There will be an electronic way to do that. Right now, the way that they do that is they send an email to Karen, but there's hope that there will be a more automated process in the future after all of the bugs can get tested, but they are working on that fastly and furiously in the IT department. There is already, and there was last session, a way for people to submit their quote unquote written testimony online. It's more electronic testimony now, and it will get sent right to your email inbox. And in a minute, I'll show you where you can find it online. After the public hearing, there'll be a little bit of time to allow the analysts to compile all the information, and also to allow maybe the sponsor and others to think about what they want to present as perhaps proposed amendments. And then there'll be a work session scheduled. Again, the chairs are involved with scheduling that. That's their responsibility. At that work session, you'll receive information from Sam or from me as the analyst. We usually print a document we call a bill analysis. We'll try and post those online. But what I learned since we last met is that the process for the people who work in our office to post things online is actually very clunky and cumbersome, and it's very difficult, and it requires many more steps than I ever imagined. So I will not always be able to post everything online before a work session, but I will definitely email you with the documents, and then within 24 hours after the work session, and those are 24 business hours, they will be posted online. But to the extent I have the information, it will be posted online in advance. But don't worry, if it isn't, you will have access to it. But the number one rule to realize is read your emails that come from Sam or from me, because those might be the emails that have the document you need to look at in preparation for the work session. I know you get a ton of email, and I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you'll like the emails from us, and hopefully you'll find them helpful to you. If not, don't tell me. I'll be offended. I try and check if people are laughing to see if they're paying attention to me. During the work session, there are different ways to vote. Those are the ought not to pass, ought to pass amended, etc. The key thing to know here is if you have an idea for an amendment and you want to speak to Sam or to myself beforehand and ask us to help you pull that together, or if you want to present it at the work session, I would beg of you, please do not attempt to draft the amendment in the statute. It's not that you're not smart or very talented. It's that drafting statutes is an art, not a science. At least we want to think so, because it's job security to us and to the revisor's office. So if you please would just instead give us an idea of what the concept is. So I want to amend the bill and get rid of everything that it has to do with spirits, because I think this proposal should only have to do with beer and wine, something like that. You could put it in bullet points. You could talk to me, call me on the phone, email me, same for Sam, and ask us to put it in bullet points. It's easier for the committee to understand maybe if they just see what the concepts are, and then we'll work on the language. Because if you'll see this next step over here on the right-hand side, we then, after different amendments are voted for, we draft the amendments. We also consult with the revisor's office. They make sure we haven't screwed it up, and you would be amazed at how extremely bright the proofreaders are in the revisor's office. They're the unsung heroes of the legislative process. They catch everything, and the degree of their knowledge just always astounds me, and they usually prevent us from screwing it up. But if there is a screw up in there, it's not their fault, because they catch so much. We also send the draft amendment before we bring it back to you to the fiscal office, so they can draft the fiscal note by reaching out to the different departments and agencies. If you remember, I told you all draft amendments are confidential. So we will probably ask at the first work session for a blanket permission for the fiscal office to share draft amendments with agencies and departments. Otherwise, it's hard for them to get the information they need to draft up that fiscal note for you. but we being Sam and myself won't be sharing any draft language with anyone unless we ask at the work session, perhaps for permission to work with a certain stakeholder who's really going to be essential for us to work with in order to draft the amendment correctly. For example, the Secretary of State's office, if it's an election bill, we might really need to work with them to make sure, because they're the experts on those laws, to make sure that all the correct laws are being amended in the right way. Sometimes the Attorney General's office for the same reason. Then after all of that's done, we'll bring it to you for a language review, and you'll have a chance to review everything. If you don't like something and it's just technical, we'll fix it up. If you really, once you see it in writing, are no longer pleased, there's always a chance to ask for a motion to reconsider, change everything around, but eventually you'll all agree with the language of the amendments that have been written. And then the clerk, Karen, will report it out of committee and it'll go to the floor. At that point, it's not as if Sam and I disappear and turn into pumpkins. We are still available. If you want to ask for any floor amendments, you obviously can go to the revisor's office and ask for a floor amendment. If you want to talk to Sam or myself first, we can help coordinate that with the revisor's office for you. Or if the right now, it's my understanding, at least early on in this session, there will be a lot of committee time, and perhaps, excuse me, the whole legislature won't meet for a little bit of time. And so it may be that you forget precisely all the details of a proposal, and now it's time for you to have a floor debate. You can't quite remember. Feel free to reach out to us then. We can give you more ideas about and remind you of what happened. But just again, because we are nonpartisan, we wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what to say. We can just answer your questions and refresh your memory. So going back on our committee page, when we are having those work sessions and we are going to have a bill analysis or there are proposed amendments that are being presented, again, you would find those here on the committee meeting materials by LD. There's nothing here now, but it'll list the LD number, and then it might say bill analysis. It might say proposed amendment from sponsor. It might say proposed amendment from Representative Chiazzo or Representative Corey, and you'll be able to link to that document here. And we aren't planning to take them down, so they'll be there for you to look at. But how do you find the testimony? Because that is not here on this page. So if I go back to the legislature's homepage, which you can always get back to on the top left home, you could just type in the bill number. For example, we are hearing LD 109 next week. Type it in, hit return. This is going to bring me to the what is referred to as the chamber status page. It tells you the status of this bill in the chambers. It gives you the LD number, the title, the primary sponsor. It tells you that what happened last was that this bill was referred to this committee. If I wanted to see the testimony for this bill, I would click on bill text and other documents or committee info. It doesn't matter which one you click on. If you click on that, you're going to be brought to a different page. This is where you can actually see what is in this bill. If you click on this, the printed document, that's the actual text of the bill. It's going to bring up the PDF, and we'll go through what are the details of this. But there's a lot of things on this page that you may not realize are there. So text and disposition will show you this, the text of the bill and any amendments. Click on amendments, it'll show you all of the different amendments. Again, they're text. Status in committee this is where you're going to find when is the public hearing, what's the testimony, etc. So this public hearing is next Wednesday at 10 a.m. But no testimony has yet been submitted. You may realize this because you haven't gotten any in your email inbox. So you might not believe me, but that this is where the testimony is. So to prove it to you, I have a bill from last session. Do you see LD 553, the sports betting bill now? Okay, I wasn't sure if I switched tabs, if it would switch it for you. So I'm glad to know that it did. So a reminder, I'm sure you remember, but if you want to find testimony or everything else, you can click either bill text or committee info, either one. I'm going to click committee info to show you can get to that both ways. This will bring you directly to this page, but if you ended up and you're seeing the bill text and you're like, wait, Janet said I could click that, you just go over here to status and committees. It's on the left side. So you can see that this sports betting bill had a public hearing on Friday, April 26, 2019. and that there were 9 items of testimony submitted. If you click on the little plus sign, you're going to see a list of the people who testified, alphabetical in order by last name first. And in the middle, it'll tell you if they were representing a company or they're a lobbyist representing a client. It'll tell you who their client is. So Greg Dougal represented Hospitality Maine when he presented this testimony. If you click on Greg Dougal's name, you'll be brought straight to the document. If I click on it, it's going to download it in a separate place and I have to open it. So clicking on it is not going to help you, but that is how you get to it. Some people are just testifying as themselves, members of the public, in which case you'll see their town of residence in the middle. So this person is not representing South Portland as a town. This person is from South Portland. So that's what that means. On the right, it tells you the size. So you'll see Jeff Morris might have had a lot more to say, or he could have had a lot of pictures. So that's all that really means.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Samantha Warren, the last one says resident. Why doesn't that say a town? Don't you have to state the town that you're from?
So that is probably an error in entering it in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, probably from
Usually
the
she represents the university system. And that's what she did here. So that might have been an error uploading it. And this actually uploading the testimony is an extremely time-consuming and complicated process. Karen has to take all of it and scan it and upload it. And actually now that it's, so if Karen were to receive it sort of by hand or on her own email, I think she has to take care of it. If people submit it online through the online testimony portal, they're actually typing in that information. And it could have been that the information was typed in maybe without understanding that they weren't supposed to write resident there, or they could have just not filled in the resident, and then that's why it's not there. Yeah. It's hard to know. Some of it's error of the person testifying, and some of it's just scanning error later.
I just didn't know if it was a separate category.
No, it's a great question. Down below all the testimony will be a list of all the work sessions. You can see there were multiple work sessions on this sports betting bill. Many times the committee met and discussed the bill, but didn't decide, so they tabled it. But in the end, it was reported out with a 3-way report. The majority voted ought to pass as amended. Another group of people voted ought to pass with a different amendment, and somebody voted ought not to pass. If you're ever interested in knowing who were those people, you can actually look here, divided reports, and it'll tell you who voted which way. So you can find that information right there.
Hey, Janet?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, just to get back to the public hearing portion of it. We had some instances in committee where, you know, if the public was speaking, they didn't actually necessarily provide written testimony. Are we going to capture that anyway here, or is that just going to be the YouTube channel is going to be the record of that?
The YouTube channel will be the record of that, but Karen is responsible as the committee clerk for the master files for the committee that are archived and kept for all time. Well, I don't know for all time, but at least for a long time. And she is responsible, if you remember, when we talked about the addendum involving COVID to the model committee rules, ordinarily somebody would sign in right on a testimony sign-in sheet, and they would record that information, and she would put a copy in the master files. Now, because they aren't doing that, she is keeping track and writing it down herself, and that will all be in the committee files. If they're to say something like, I propose it be amended in X way, I'll put that in the bill analysis. I'm just going to take a drink of water real fast.
No worries. So if if we have an instance where someone from, let's say, Scarborough wants to talk about a bill and they haven't submitted written testimony, but they're in the queue and we're going to hear them in their 3 minutes, that'll be just listed. Will that be listed under a for or against list somewhere, or how would we keep track of that?
At this moment, I believe that will only be recorded in the master files, but I'm sure Karen could scan it and send it to you. I've actually asked her to do that in the past because I have actually a hard time hearing sometimes, and I wouldn't catch somebody's name. And so I would just ask her to scan me that list and she'd send it to me. And then I'd say, oh, that was what they said. It wasn't Brian, it was Ryan. I was totally right. I will let you know that sometimes what happens in committee is somebody's presenting testimony and you realize you have nothing in your email, you didn't receive anything from them. And often the committee will say, if it's something really important that they don't want to forget, they'll say, can you please submit testimony? And people can submit it after the public hearing. In the past, that would not be displayed here. I know there was talk about changing that. I do not know the results of those conversations, but it would still come to your email inbox and you would have it so that you could look at it. Especially, feel free to ask anybody, because the testimony submission portal doesn't disappear when the hearing's over. It's still there. They can still submit it afterwards and you would get it. Let's see. So that was from last session. We'll go back to a bill this session. So this was LD 109, which we are hearing next Wednesday. Well, I guess you're hearing it. I just like to feel included. So this is the bill. If you were in, I don't know actually if you get copies of all the bills. I usually do. I don't know if you get printed copies, but this is what the printout looks like. It's just a PDF version of it. You'll see here number 109. This is the LD number you hear people talking about. LD stands for legislative document. These are in sequential order from the date of printing. So the very first bill printed is LD1 and the very last bill printed has the highest number for the session. If you submitted any bill requests, you might have been told you have an LR number, that's the legislative request number. The legislative request number is also in sequential order from the date and time that the request was made. There's no relationship between the LR number and the LD number because the numbers are generated at different stages in the process. So LRs are generated when the request is made. Some bills take longer to print than others. Some are more complicated. Some might require input from different agencies, or the sponsor might look at it when they're given the copy and they might decide they want to do some more work on it. So the LD number is when it's actually printed for the legislature, and that's the number people refer to. This is the number the public usually knows about. It's the number that the public hearing is notified based upon. So that's the number to really remember. You just only have to keep track of an LR number for your own purposes before the bills you've requested are printed. There's also, of course, another number, because why not have 3 numbers for the same document? That's really helpful and not confusing at all. And this is the HP number. It might be an SP number. HP stands for House paper. SP, I bet you guessed already, is Senate paper. Again, that's a number that starts from 1 at the beginning of the session and just keeps counting up. So this is the 75th paper printed for the House. That will tell you, in this case, that the primary sponsor of this legislation, or the person who requested it, is a House member, and SP would be that it's being introduced in the Senate. If you look down here, you confirmed that it was in fact a representative from the House. Representative Falkingham is the primary sponsor. As you all know, because you can be asked, there could be co-sponsors, and there are rules about how many there can be of these, and yet sometimes we see them that are the whole page long of 1 million co-sponsors. So I don't pretend to understand all of the rules about this, but that's where you'll see who sponsored the bill. In the middle, you'll see that it was the secretary and the clerk under the joint rule that referred this to committee. If there is a bill that is printed where the secretary and the clerk aren't going to actually make the reference, if they feel like that should be a decision of the legislature, they're not comfortable making that decision for you, it'll have a suggested reference here. They'll suggest where the bill will go. So you'll know this is referred because it says that under the joint rule, but sometimes I imagine they'll be printed, it says suggested reference, and that means it's going to be up to the House and Senate to vote on where the bill will go. So this is a good bill to use as an example, because this is an example of the kind of information you can and can't find when you look directly at the text of the bill. So the SEC 1, this is the section of the bill. It's not the section of the revised statutes, it's the section of the bill. So this first section of the bill, what does it do? It's affecting this, 21A MRSA 336. So what the heck does that mean? The first number is the title of the main revised statute. So it's Title 21A. Just so you know, you'll become familiar with this. That is the elections laws in Maine. And this little funky symbol, which Senator Lucchini always laughs at me about, it's actually 2 S's stacked upon each other and connected so that the Don't laugh, so that it makes a little circle in the middle. It's like an old-fashioned symbol. I don't know where it came from, but that means section. That's the section number of Title 21A that's being amended. And this right here tells you the last time it was amended or when it was enacted. Sometimes it'll say as enacted by, and that means the last time this section was touched was when it was enacted. And you'll see PL 1995 means public law from 1995. Because it says amended by, you know that this section of law was created before 1995, but the last time the legislature touched it was in 1995. And then what is it going to do to that? It's repealing, and the following is enacted in its place. So because if it either says something is repealed, and then it won't show you anything under it, or if it's repealed and replaced, you have no idea what the original law was. Because anything underlined in a bill, anything underlined is brand new law that's going to be created by this bill. By contrast, if I scroll down a little bit, anything crossed out is existing law that you're getting rid of. And anything that's nothing, it's neither underlined nor crossed out, is existing law. So I'm going to start actually down here with section 4. This is a provision of law, again, Title 21A, section 601. The last time this law was amended was in 2013, and this bill is taking this paragraph B of current law. Most of it is staying the same because there's no underlines or strikes outs. But what the bill is doing is crossing out, getting rid of 4 or 5 words and adding in all of the underlined text. That's what the bill is doing. But if we go to section 1, it's telling you it's repealing the current law and enacting this in its place. So you have no idea what the current law is that's being repealed. If you look at this, all you can see is what the bill is proposing to do new. If it was just repealing it, all it would say is 21A, section 336, as amended by whatever, is repealed. And then you would see nothing. So you would literally have no idea what law is going away. So how can you find it? I'll show you if I'm going to go back to the Maine legislature's homepage. So if you look down on the legislature's homepage, all of the statutes, you can click right to them. This is the current statutes as of the end of 2020. And if you click on that, you'll be brought to the list of all of the titles of Maine law. It goes from 1 all the way down to 37, I think, no, 39A. So remember that first number, I'll show you again, this first number, 21A, is the title. So when you're on the list of titles, you're going to click 21A. That's your elections laws. And oh, I forgot my section number. Let me look. It's 336. So I'm going to go here and find 336. It looks like it's in this chapter 5 nominations. Then I'll go to 336. Just scroll down. Okay, now there's a whole bunch here. What exactly are we amending? We're amending subsection 3. So I'm going to look at subsection 3 here. This is the paragraph that is current law. It's just a whole paragraph all bunched together. And this is the way it's going to be under new law. And if you were to look at this in detail and compare the two, I'm going to remind you what the title is of this bill. This is an act to facilitate fair ballot representation for all candidates by allowing a candidate's nickname to appear on the ballot. So if we look at this section 1, it's telling you this is a consent. If you were to read the whole section online that I just showed you over in this tab, this is the consent you file when you're going to get your signatures to run as a candidate. And under current law, some of the stuff on the bottom is there. You have to put your residence on the consent. You have to say what party you are on the consent. You have to say and declare that you meet the qualifications for the office you're seeking. I say you because you've all run before, I haven't. And then in the bottom, it tells you you have to swear before a notary public. So all of this, if you were to look at the current law, is in there. What's being added is this stuff. It's requiring you to give your name, that's your legal name. And if you wish to have a nickname on the ballot, you have to say what you want it to appear as. Do you want your initial and middle initial? Do you want your legal name with your nickname? Kind of give the order you want. And it would require this bill, this is new, not in current law, because the nickname is not in current law. It requires you to declare that that's the name by which you're known to others. It's not just any old nickname like Superstar Janet. Although I am known to others by that name, in my own mind anyway. So again, you just have to compare what's the current law, what does it say here on the legislator's homepage website, versus what does it say in this bill. So that is kind of difficult whenever it's a repealed and replaced or just a repealed law. You should hopefully be a little assured, however, because when I do a bill analysis, I try and tell you and compare the old law to the new law. I sometimes drone on about it. I usually try and make a chart to compare old to new because that's how my mind works. If you find that very annoying, reach out to me, but I do think it helps to kind of put side by side old and new law whenever I have time to do so. Sometimes there's just too many bills and I don't have time to make those charts, but I do try and tell you what's gone away and what's new. You'll see section 2 is another repealed and replaced. So you'd have to go through that same exercise of looking at the old versus new. I did it. And again, it's the A and B that are new and the rest is all stuff that's already in the law. But when they repeal and replace, everything's underlined because everything's new because you've repealed all the old. We already talked about this section 4. Most of the language is existing law. It doesn't have any underlining. That's how you know. There's only a few words that are being removed and those you'll see stricken through. And the new language is underlined. And that's what you can tell here. So the other parts of this bill, you'll see it's all going through the same things. The other parts of this bill that's important is the summary. And that you'll find at the very end of each bill. And it's supposed to be a plain language description by nonpartisan staff. Under the joint rules, it actually says the revisor's office is responsible for the contents of the summary. Now you do, if you've sponsored the bill, you do have a chance to ask that the summary change a little bit, but ultimately it's up to the revisor's office. And this is their way of explaining to you in shorthand what it does. Sometimes the summary is really, really long. And sometimes it's really short and brief and to the point. But when we get to the work session, Sam or I will summarize the bill for you in a way we think is helpful to you as having to vote for it. So we won't necessarily just restate this summary. We might give you a little bit more information as well. One other thing I did want to show you, if you go to the statutes and you look at the existing law, I got to this page by finding Title 21A, if you remember, and then I just navigated and browsed down through to find the section. If you don't want to do that, when you're here on the list of titles page, up here in the left hand is statute search. You don't have to browse and find it by hand. You can actually just type it in that we wanted Title 21A and we wanted section, again, there's that funny symbol Senator Lucchini mocks me about. You can just type in the number and just hit search and that'll bring you right to it. You won't have to browse through it. So you can get to it either way. I personally recommend browsing. I know it takes longer and I'm sort of the ancient person that actually looks in the books if I can help it. But if you browse, you kind of get an idea of the structure of the law, and 336 is in here. And I look here and, oh, we're in an article of this law that's all about nomination by primary election. So this section of the law has something to do with nominations and primary elections. And I realized, oh, there's all this other information. So if you're interested, you kind of get the context for where that's going to be in the statutes. It's not necessary by any means, but you might find it helpful. And one last thing I want to show you just related to this bill is a lot of titles and a lot of even chapters of titles have definition sections, excuse me, and they're usually really early on. So the overall definitions for the title here are in chapter 1, definitions. Excuse me, I'm gonna turn off my sound. Oh, I don't know how to mute. I can't talk. Excuse me. A lot of times you'll get a lot of information if you look at the definition sections. It'll tell you something that maybe you thought you knew what it meant, but it might not really. One example would be down here. maybe you all knew this, but I did not. The word township, this word appears in the bill at one place, and what it means is the unorganized territory. Probably you all knew that. I wasn't really for sure exactly what township meant. So there is a section here that talks about townships, and you'll know, oh, that means the unorganized territory residents. So you can sometimes get information that way. Rest assured, if it's a very important definition, I'll bring it up to you during the bill analysis so you'll know what it means. Okay, some other hopefully really quick things. I'm going to show you examples of other bills we're about to hear. There are shortcut ways to do this, but I'm going to go back and show you the way that's easiest to do this. So I'm going to show you another example from LD 16, which you are hearing on Monday. And this, if you just look at this chamber status page after you press search on the homepage of the legislature's website, it says this bill is sponsored by Senator Lucchini. But if you were to talk to him, he'd say, this was not my idea. I sponsored this for a department. Not that he objects to it, but he'd just say that that wasn't a request he submitted. He's just sponsoring it for the department. You wouldn't necessarily know that by looking at this page, but let's click bill text again, remind you how you find the actual text of the bill. This brings you to the PDF version of the bill. And if you look here, I'm going to blow it up a little. It says it was submitted by the Department of Public Safety. So now you know this is actually a department bill. So whenever the governor's office submits a bill, which they can do at any time during the session, or when departments submit a bill before the cloture date for departments, they're printed, but they have somebody listed, usually a committee chair, although not always, it's not required, as the presenter of the bill. So he actually didn't sponsor this bill in the traditional sense. He's presenting this to the committee on behalf of the department. So that's another kind of thing you can find on the front page. And again, just as a refresher, this is the most basic thing, but the most important thing. When something is being amended, anything stricken out is what's being removed from existing law. Anything underlined is being added. And all of this language that's not underlined or stricken out is existing law that's not going to be changed by the bill. But there is one caution you need to know when you're looking at language that's neither underlined nor stricken through, because there's something called unallocated language. I didn't see a good example in the bills you're hearing next week, so I'm going to pick a different example from this session. It's LD2. This is a bill that is sponsored by Representative Talbot Ross. It's an act to require the inclusion of racial impact statements in the legislative process. Again, you click on the left to the bill text, you call up the printed document, and the first thing that this bill does is it enacts a new chapter of law. It's all brand new. Remember, all new language is underlined, so you see that. But then if you look down here, if you looked quickly, you'd see none of this language is underlined. It must not be important. It must be existing law. Nothing's changed. Your eyes glaze over it and you move on. But that would be wrong. If you remember, up here at the top, section 1, that's telling you it's Title 2 of the Maine Revised Statutes Annotated, Chapter 7. It might say section whatever. That's telling you we're actually affecting the statutes that are codified and exist in law for the Maine. But down here where it says section 2 of the bill, it doesn't say that. It doesn't refer to the MRSA. There's nothing in the statute books that's going to change from this part of the bill. So this is all what's called unallocated language. It's not allocated to any of the titles of Maine law. If you click through the statutes on the Maine legislature's homepage, you'll never find this, even if you enact it. So this type of unallocated language provides a direction to an agency, or it could create a study, and that's exactly what this does. It's a short-term part of law. It just has the same force of law as another statute, but it's not going to last forever. It's a shorter in term, so there's no need to put it in the statute books and keep it on the shelf forever. The direction is going to be given to whoever's being told to do something, and they're supposed to do it in the next year or two. So it doesn't need to go in the titles for all time. So this is an example of one that creates a study. So it's going to tell people It's going to tell the Legislative Council to conduct a study. This tells them what they're supposed to consider, tells them the findings and recommendations they're supposed to do. They're supposed to report back to the legislature. All of that's very important information. It's all new information that's new, created by this bill, even though it's not underlined. So be careful. If you see a section that has nothing underlined and nothing crossed out, look up here to see if there's any part of the MRSA. If there isn't, if there's no title of the main statutes that's being amended, then it's unallocated language. It's a direction to somebody. It is important to understand what that part of the bill is doing. A lot of times those directions might be a direction to a department to say, please amend your rules by a certain date to effectuate what we're passing in this law. So it's a kind of a short-term direction. So that's what we call unallocated language, not allocated to any title of main law. There are also, you might want to, another type of bill you might see is what's called a concept draft. You are hearing one of these next week as well. So I'll just show you that really quick. Again, this brings you up to the title. It's an act to limit political advertising, sponsored by Representative O'Connell. Bill text, it'll bring you right to it. And when you click on it, again, the same kind of home page, first page, it tells you the LD number, the title, that Representative O'Connell's the sponsor, that has been referred by the clerk and the secretary. And on the next page, you don't see any kind of language. It just says concept draft, that's all it says. And then you have a summary, that's it. So the joint rules do allow for a concept draft. Concept drafts are where the sponsor doesn't have particular language to propose to change the existing laws. The main revisor's office has a drafting manual that explains that concept drafts are appropriate when the sponsor doesn't have sufficient details for the revisor's office to draft the bill before the bill has to be printed, or if the sponsor is aware of a problem but is unsure of how best to solve that problem. It could be because the sponsor knows there are multiple options and they don't know which one to pick, and they want to be clear that they're telling the committee, you pick the right option, I'm just alerting you to the problem. Or it could be that the sponsor doesn't know what the available options are, but hopes that when the committee gets this bill and has a public hearing and has time to hear from all the stakeholders, that the committee might find out a good answer. So this is an example of that kind of a concept draft. It tells you what the sponsor wants to do and what he's worried about and why he wants the committee to take more of a look at it, but he doesn't have the answer right now. And it's up to you as a committee to decide what you want to do with that information when you have a work session on that. The other thing you often hear about is the fiscal note. None of the bills we have right now have a fiscal status determined yet. You'll know if there's a fiscal note idea already right here, right under the printed document. Sometimes before the hearing, it's rare, but it does occasionally happen. There'll be something here, and that's a preliminary fiscal impact statement. It's not an actual fiscal note to the bill, but it's some preliminary information from the fiscal office. You can imagine with them working with the supplemental budget, preparing for the biennial budget, and having over 1,500 bills that they're going to have to be looking at, that they don't have a lot of time to prepare all these preliminary fiscal statements. So you usually won't see that until after the committee votes and either decides straight to pass it, and then you'll get a fiscal note on the original bill, or the committee votes for an amendment and that you'll get a fiscal note on the amendment. I just want to show you one of those quickly. So I have to go back to 129th legislature, and I'll just pick on the sports betting bill. Again, just because it's one I remember working on a lot. So here, there was the original bill, and then the committee voted for amendments. And if you want to know what the amendment's fiscal impact was, there's a fiscal note linked right here. So if you clicked on this document, you get the actual text of the amendment. If you click on the link below it, you'll get the text of the fiscal note. And just so you've seen one before, you get one for a bill before you, the top part of the fiscal note, again, gives you the legislature. We're in the 130th, so this is from before. The LD number again. You actually see the LR number here, which is interesting. The reason they do that is because this second number just tells us internally, is it the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, different amendments? It helps us track it. Up here, sorry, MAC, that means Mark Sear signed off on it. He signs off on all the fiscal notes. So it's not released until he agrees with it. Tells you the title of the bill, tells you it was in our committee, and that yes, they believe there's a fiscal note required. Down here, it will tell you for the current fiscal year you're in, this is not our current year because this was from before, remember, for the next fiscal year coming up. And then they project out for 2 more fiscal years. Anything that doesn't have a parentheses around it, so this number here is a cost to the government. Anything with parentheses is either a new revenue coming in or a savings to the government. And it goes through all of this. So you see that they're saying overall, the net savings will be this much. And here you see it down here, it's going to be revenue to the general fund. Then there's kind of an explanation. There's always a correctional and just judicial impact statement. If there's some kind of potential, it'll cause new crimes or cases to be filed in the judicial system, then there'll be some kind of statement here. If there's not, that might not be there. And then this is sort of an explanation from the fiscal analyst to you, telling you what all these numbers mean. So you would be able to read through that and see it. If you go down, it keeps going on and explaining. But all of this information about the cost to the state and revenues to the state, when you see those, that's going to mean that I, as the drafter of the amendment for you, need to make sure that that ends up incorporated into the amendment itself so that you know how it's changing the budget. So when I draft the amendment, I work on all this language stuff, all that you see. And then at the very bottom, there'll be what's called an appropriations and allocation statement or a section of the bill. This down here is the appropriations and allocations, and this just sets forth where is all this money coming from or going to. You're going to start seeing this type of statement when we go through the budget. It gives you a little information. There's going to need to be a new position created in order to oversee sports betting if it had been enacted through this amendment, and this is how much it's going to cost. So all kinds of information appears in the amendment once there's a fiscal note to it. I just wanted to show you, just to remind you of something we talked about before. Underlined language is new language, cross out is old, disappearing. There's a section here where you see nothing underlined or struck through. You might just glaze over that and think, Janet told me if there's no underlining and no striking through, it's existing law, I can ignore it. But aha, this is one of those where there's no main revised statutes listed here after this section. So this is unallocated law. This is a direction to a department or an agency. It's just short in time. So this is actually new. It's telling them, go ahead and adopt these rules quickly. So that would be something you'd really need to know and read. But don't worry, I'll try and make sure I catch all of those things for you if you don't have it, if you don't notice them in the draft. So that's where you get the fiscal information right here on the bill text page. You'd find the fiscal note printed. There was actually, this is the majority amendment that was adopted. There was a minority amendment. You can find that on the amendments page. It has its own fiscal note based on different assumptions because the amendments did different things so that you can imagine would change how much money would come in or go out or how much it would cost the state. So you can find both amendments here and you can compare their fiscal notes here if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that for you today because this bill doesn't exist anymore. One other thing I want to show you, I'm going to go back to the legislature's homepage just to remind you how you get here again. This is another thing we're going to hear on Monday. This is a resolve. So resolves are basically just all unallocated language. A resolve, like unallocated language in a bill, has the force of law, just like any old public law, but it doesn't change what's written in the main revised statute. So there's no titles of the law that are being changed. So here's an example of a resolve. You're going to be hearing it Monday. This is a rules resolve. So because it's a resolve, it'll start right off, have the word resolve in front. It still has an LD number. It still has an HP number that counts right up. But this is about rulemaking. And you heard a discussion from Office of Marijuana Policy this morning about rulemaking. And if you're new to the legislature, you heard somebody ask, is it a major substantive rule or is it a routine technical rule? We're going to have a presentation on Wednesday about rulemaking and how that works, but there are some rules that the legislature has to review and decide on and approve before they can actually take effect. Those are the major substantive ones, and you know that you have to review them when you see a resolve printed. So this is a major substantive rule of the Department of Public Safety. You're going to have the public hearing on it Monday, and it's about fantasy gambling. So those are fantasy sports contests. But this is a resolve that's being presented by the department. Representative Caiazzo did not say, hey, I'm going to draft some rules and I would like you all to approve them. He's just reporting this to you on behalf of the department. So when something is being brought by a department or an agency or a study commission and they have authority by law to introduce legislation on it, then there'll be somebody who's listed as reporting it. Usually in this case, it'll always be a chair. So if this was coming through the Senate, then they'd pick Senator Lucchini. Since it's coming through the House, they picked Representative Caiazzo. There are rules about whether it comes from the Senate or the House that you don't need to know, but there are rules about that. So they can't choose which one of them appears here. This is all assigned by the revisor's office, sort of without their choice at all. Doesn't mean they hate it, but it just also doesn't mean they love it either. They're just presenting it for the entity listed here. So a resolve, again, because this is not going in the main revised statutes, you're not going to see anything crossed out or underlined. We're not changing the titles of law. Instead, it's all what we called unallocated language. You see no MRSAs here. This is just language that has the force of law, but it's not a direction that exists for all time. It's something that can be completed in the next year or two. So it's a short-term effect. And that's what this resolve actually does. If you look through it, is it's telling this Department of Public Safety that they are authorized to adopt their rules finally. That's all it's doing. So once they do that, they've done it. You don't need this in the statute books forever. Once they've adopted the rules finally, they've done it. So why keep that forever? We're not going to. It's unallocated language. It can be in a resolve. This is a helpful resolve to see because it has an emergency preamble. Emergency preambles can also be on bills. It says that right there at the top. What an emergency preamble does is it allows this legislation, should you all enact it as a legislature, to take effect immediately. Ordinarily, under the Maine Constitution, anything that you enact as law will not take effect until 90 days after you adjourn, sign, or die. That means when you're totally done with the session. And then 90 days later, the law takes effect. The reason there are that 90 days, there may be several reasons, but one of them is it gives people who object to the law an opportunity to pursue a people's veto of that legislation. They have 90 days to collect the signatures. But sometimes the legislature decides we can't wait 90 days. We need this to happen immediately. That's why the emergency preamble is on the top. It does require 2/3 of the legislature to vote for the legislation rather than just a little bit more than 50%, which is ordinarily how you pass legislation. So there is a consequence or cost to putting the emergency preamble on. You need more people to vote in your favor. Sometimes the emergency preambles can make interesting reads. They can give you a whole bunch of reasons why somebody thinks it's an emergency. Rules have pretty standard emergency preambles, so there's not a lot of information here. But if you see another bill, it might have a lot of whereas clauses. And if you read through it, it shows sort of the justification for why this has to take effect now instead of waiting the 90 days. There is a possibility sometimes. So emergency laws take effect when they're passed and signed by the governor or the governor's veto is overridden. All other public laws and resolves take effect 90 days after you adjourn, sign or die, unless sometimes every once in a while, it's not frequent, there might be a provision that'll be right down here at the bottom that'll say effective date, and it may give a longer time, usually a longer time, before the law would be effective. One example of that you might have remembered being talked about last week was automatic voter registration. That law, as Deputy Secretary Flynn and Secretary of State Bellows discussed, takes a lot of computer programming and different purchases of systems and software and upgrading to make sure the the tablets are purchased for people to use to sign up to vote at the DMV. All of that was understood by the legislature when it enacted that law to take some time. So they put an effective date on there that was not 90 days later. They gave the Secretary of State's office a year or two. I don't remember exactly how long to put that into effect. And you'd see that right here, there'd be an effective date clause. So the only other kind of law, there could be a bill, and a bill always has at least one provision that changes the titles of law that are in the statute books. A resolve, which has the force of law, and it does direct somebody to do something, but it doesn't actually change the titles in the books. The other type, and we see them more than other committees do, are called resolutions. And we have one referred to us, but it's not actually scheduled for hearing yet, but I can show it to you just so you know what it looks like. So this is a constitutional resolution. It proposes an amendment to the Constitution to specify the qualifications of electors. It's another Representative Falkingham bill. He must love our committee. He must know that the best is listed last on the committee webpage. If you go to the bill text, you're going to now get the text of this constitutional resolution. It looks a little bit different, and there's a reason for that. The front page of all of these look the same though. You still have the LD number, the HP number. It tells you who the sponsor is. There can be co-sponsors. But if you go to the next thing, it tells you that it's amending the Constitution. It's not amending any of the titles of Maine law. I'm going to show you on the Maine legislature's homepage, down here where the statutes button is, there's also a Constitution button. You could navigate to the Constitution if you want to see what it says now. On the left-hand side, you can pick the article you want, and you can read sort of the text of the law. So this is Article 2, Section 1. That's what it reads now. This is telling you that if you were to pass this resolution, you are proposing to amend Article 2, Section 1 to read this. And again, just like with bills, underlined will be new text. If there's a strike through, that's something that would be repealed. The legislature does not have the authority to create a constitutional amendment itself. Instead, 2/3 of the legislature must vote in favor of it, and then it goes out to a vote. So the bottom of this constitutional resolution is where you, as a legislature, if you enact it by 2/3 vote, are directing every election official in the state to conduct an election on that question. If you look at a constitutional resolution and you're voting on it in committee, you can amend any of this constitutional resolution. So if you like what it's proposing to do, but you don't like the way the question is worded, that's something you can vote to amend in this resolution. So you just have the same kind of options you would have with a bill. One thing that's important to note, not only is it 2/3 vote of the legislature and then a vote of the people, the governor does not either sign or veto constitutional resolutions. The constitutional resolutions are solely within the province of the legislature and the electorate as a whole. The governor doesn't have a role to play. So you would never have a veto vote on this. Let's see, did I have anything else I wanted to show you? One second. I think those were all the things. I just did them in slightly different order. I'd written in my notes myself yesterday. So those are the things I wanted to show you. I know that was a lot of information, but basically what you need to remember is the legislature's homepage, click on committees, you'll get to VLA, you'll find the materials, including any kind of bill analyses or anything else by LD. If you want to find the testimony or the actual text, then you need to type the LD document right here into the home page and hit search, and then navigate through to the testimony or the document itself. And always what you need to remember is just ask Sam or me, and we will help you find these things if you can't find them when you're looking from home. We do not mind, and we actually are very delighted to speak to you because we can't see you in person and we miss all the people. We don't get into this job because we don't like people. We're people. I'm actually very shy, but I do like speaking to people. So just give me a call if you want some help finding something. For example, Representative McCrate said, can you give me some of those directions again so she could help her constituents? And I sent her an email back with some of the screenshots, and I put yellow arrows and red arrows and blue arrows to all different things. Gave her an explanation so she could help her constituents find it. I'm happy to do that. Whatever you think would help you to make this session easier, because we know it's a little more difficult in this remote environment.
Thank you, Janet. As Janet knows, I definitely take advantage of being able to call and ask questions all the time.
What's the phone number we should use to contact Janet?
It is 207-287-1670. And that is the number that is the front office for the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis. You can use the same number to get a hold of Sam, who, as you may or may not remember from before, will work on the marijuana bills and some, if not all, of the veterans bills. The reason I give you that number is the secretaries answer it, and we have a way of telling people where we are. So if we're working from home, they'll know that. If we're in a meeting, they'll know that. If we're just stepped out to the restroom or whatever, so they can connect you to our voicemail, and then we can check our voicemail from home and call you back, or they might try and connect you to me and say, oh, she's here today. And then they'll realize, oh, she's probably just in the restroom, call back in 5 minutes. So they can give you a little more information than just going straight to our voicemail would give you.
Thank you.
Janet, this is so helpful after, 6 and some years. There's so much still to learn. So thanks.
You're
Really.
welcome. Anytime.
And we're going to be spending so much time on the website this year that it's really helpful to see all that stuff.
Oh, I forgot to show you a really cool part. Can I show you one more thing?
Absolutely.
Maybe you don't think it's cool, but I'm sort of a nerd.
I have to jump on another Zoom, but I will watch this later.
Okay, this is really fast. Remember, the other way to get to a title is you do the statute search. This was a provision we were looking at earlier that was being amended. If you look down here at the very bottom, in existing law, it's talking about another section of statute. It used to be that you'd have to look at that and then find section 337. That's easy because it's the next one over, and the top left and right tell you as if you were in a book, go left and right in the book. But if this was like Title 5, section 1456, you wouldn't want to have to go back all the pages to find Title 5 again and then find 1456. So one of the things the revisor's office did is they hyperlinked all these. So if you click on it, it now goes right there. I think that's cool, but that's the only other thing I had to show you. That's all I have until Wednesday at 10:30 when we can talk more about rulemaking, and hopefully I won't cough so much.
Thank you so much for showing all of that. As a new member, there's some stuff I knew, and then there's a lot of stuff that I now have to digest and figure out really quickly. So thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Quick question, Janet, maybe for the new people and certainly for me too. So if you have a bill that you've presented, and the fiscal note comes back and you maybe they misinterpreted what you were thinking or something, who should they go and see to try and get that corrected or changed?
So if you remember, Mike Rousseau and Suzanne Boynick came and spoke to us, and they have different areas that they deal with. But if you called the fiscal office, and I can give you their number if you want, but you'll find it on the orientation materials page on that fiscal office handout. It's right at the top. But that is 287-1635. If you tell them what the topic is, then they can tell you whether it's Suzanne or Michael. You don't need to memorize that. Then you can speak with them and maybe get more information on why did they think that, what maybe you disagree on, and you can provide some input as well. They have in the past revised fiscal notes after getting more information. It's not a guarantee because they may really believe that maybe what you intend to do is X, but the actual language does Y. which might mean you need to say to Janet during the language review, Janet, we wanted to do X, but after more people looked at it, it really did Y. And I say, okay, I'll go redraft it and bring it back to you. So all of us can work together to make sure it really is doing what you want it to do.
Thank you.
And then it goes to the AFA committee if it's on the table, if it has a cost, and they can change whatever they want to change the cost. So then you get excited when you see it on the floor to see how it changed.
Excited in a good way, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then I guess we can adjourn until next Wednesday morning at 10:30. You said, right, Jan? Sorry. Yes, 10:30. This Wednesday, 10:30. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.